I'd like to call the City of Sandy City Council Workshop to session. And I'd like to welcome the West Academy students here. Thank you. We're going to be starting off with a workshop talking about, we had a bunch of council goals that we put together over a year ago. Is that right? Yeah. And we're just kind of checking in on how we're doing on those goals and what projects are getting done and where we need some more clarification on some of those goals. So that's kind of what you're going to hear in the next hour or so.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So as you mentioned, we have a pretty lengthy list of council goals this biennium. 2 weeks ago at the last council meeting, briefly touched on some of these, so I'm not going to dive into a lot of the things that are ongoing or in process currently. I'm going to try to focus on the 5 or 6 items that we need some additional clarification on, so that staff can get the direction that we need and keep making progress on those. In your packet, you will see a revised table that outlines each of the goals with some of the feedback that I got from council members last meeting. A couple items that I changed from completed to ongoing because there's still additional work that needs to be done, and then added a orangish red color section for items that are on our radar to do but have a future implementation date. So those changes have been incorporated. But let's just jump right into the goals that we need some additional clarification on. So the first one is goal 5.2, provide support, resources, and assistance for a community-led effort to establish a Parks and Recreation Special District. It's a lofty goal, and that will take quite a bit of time, both on the staff level and consultant level. We have set aside $25,000 in the existing budget to facilitate this work. But I guess the question that I'm going to pose to you right now is thoughts, questions, concerns, desired timeline, kind of just open it up for a general discussion on where everyone's at with that goal, and maybe a temperature check and then further discussion on how we'll move forward with it.
And I put there in front of you.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
That I kind of,
Yeah, the mayor did.
Interest of transparency, they're trying to just give my comments. So
I would say based off of this most recent vote, that people don't have much of an appetite for any more taxes.
Time is wrong. I mean, it's nice. I mean, if there are things that long lead things that we could put into place, but I think we're years away.
Well, I've heard a lot of support from folks and interested, and I agree that based on, comparing that to the school district is kind of apples and oranges because of the things that they had in there.
Maybe.
I don't know much about the fire district, but I think my interest is trying to kind of, get the stakeholders together, kind of identify as a group of stakeholders and getting some input from the special district. What is it? AO advisory at
Special District Association of Oregon, I believe.
Oregon, yeah. And they have consultants and folks that are that specialize in different kinds of districts. Some of them specialize in Parks and Rec districts. And so just kind of talking about, taking this step to kind of see what the interest is and doing some preliminary, probably, once you kind of identify those stakeholders and kind of a optional scope, getting a little bit of work done to see what the appetite is, if at all. But it is, it is at least a year off in the election. So it's not something that's we're going to be rushing to the May ballot. We'd be lucky to get it on the November of next year ballot. But and there is a concern about the appetite for that. And I think it's worth, I guess I'm not going to assume that just because we don't have any support for the school bond and a close race on the fire district that, we should just, finish it off. Go ahead.
I think having worked on the school bond a lot and the data and the consultants and things, the initial school bond, not this last one. There were some key differences, and one of the big weaknesses is the people who promoted the school bond this time thought they were going to win. They really thought they were 50-50, and the results came out dramatically different. And that pokes at the weakness that we would have as well, which is you can't get good polling data today to know. So whoever we poll, however we poll, whether it's Facebook or friends or stand out in front of Fred Meyer or whatever, it's inaccurate. It's the wrong, it's not a complete snapshot. So we would be shooting very blind. And I think,
Can I ask you why you say that's blind?
oh, because in the former one, when we ran that, I predicted the outcome within 0.1% because we had polling data, we had followed phone calls, we tracked every ballot. We knew we were going to win that election a week before the election because we had the votes. There's no way to do that today with cell phones and landlines. Landlines don't exist. There's just, you can't reach out and connect with people. So it's really more just throwing the dice and hoping. And I think the climate is really poor right now for a hope-based strategy that's going to raise taxes.
Would this be the Parks and Rec district? We talked about the pool falling under or the community center, if that were.
With or without a pool, yes.
Right, it's just not, you know, the idea is to try to get all the people that are using our facilities to help pay.
Right, which I'm thinking,
A lot of folks in Sandy would support that.
you can't gauge a whole lot on people online, but if they back their words about the pool
They
and
won't.
that's what I'm
They
thinking.
Because
didn't.
It's all
They
talk.
didn't.
They weren't paying for it in the first
Yeah.
place, so like the
And-
data. When the decision was made to close the pool, of the people in the city limits.
Yeah,
Only 4% of the users were in the city.
that's what if
Yeah.
we were to go forward, I would think that would be what we'd lead with, but
I think
we're
there's an
gonna get
emotional
the,
tie, but not.
yeah, we're gonna get the people that don't pay for it. And,
What do you mean?
outside the city limits.
That's what the
That's
purpose
what
of
the,
this is.
the rec district
Yeah.
would be. Would we be
Yeah,
able to
that's the whole
convey that
purpose.
to people though, that they
Yeah, oh, yeah,
understand that
yeah.
it's a shared cost? Because
Yeah.
you get somebody spitting out one sentence and the whole world blows up around that. And then there's no talking logic
Mhm.
into any of the facts behind any of it. So,
No, yeah, this is just basically, you know, people want some more sports fields, people want pickleball courts, you know, they want those kind of facilities. And from where I sit, I'm very reluctant to kind of say the city needs to go, you know, build that to the scope of meeting the need for the
Right.
whole entire, you know, Eagle Creek, to Government Camp, to Boring, to, you know, whatever. And so I think, I think it's, you know, important to kind of at least get get an assessment of what, you know, what the interest is. And, you know, even if it's not now, it's to just kind of try to start defining the scope. What is it that people want? Because they're not going to get everything. And it's going to be more of a ground up process.
So the way we did scope on the high school, I'm just gonna keep coming back to what worked, because unless we can figure out an alternative way to make it work. The way we figured out what features to put in the high school to get the votes was based on polling data. I mean, the size of that auditorium wasn't random. It was designed to trade off cost and how many extra people we were gonna get to vote for it because I had an auditorium. There's a reason there's so many trade areas dedicated to high schools, because we got more votes by building out the trades areas than we did an auditorium for drama and music. Even though we didn't even have an auditorium before middle high school. So when we start talking about the features, if we have a community meeting and we invite people out, my point is, it's not a cross section of the society. It's just a few people who care and will come out. And they threw pickleball into the school bond. And it didn't bring in a vote.
Well, you know, like I said, I get that you were very involved with that first ballot, school ballot. And then the second one, you know, they had stuff in there that you know, when they put the pickleball and the community center up at Welch's and everything, from where I sat, who's running that community center? Who's cleaning the bathrooms? You know, those kind of things. There was a lot of reasons why it didn't pass this time, and they didn't do a whole lot of,
I'm not trying
yeah,
to
I know,
fault,
but I just,
I'm trying to go back to
Right.
what will work and what won't.
Okay.
And I'm not
But-
even faulting the
yeah.
value of
Mhm.
a
I
rec
totally
district, because we're
agree.
all in favor of the value of it.
Yeah.
But the time of when we should put our time and effort into it, I think is up to debate, and I don't think it's now.
okay,
And the other piece is that you can get a lot of community input, because you're right,
you know, a lot of people do want a pool and they want those things. But until you're coming back with real numbers that this is gonna cost you $1.50 per thousand,
Right.
$2 per thousand, it's all just talk.
Right.
And so it's a lot of staff time and energy, $25,000 of taxpayer money. And I agree with Don. I think the timing is just not right.
Well, this doesn't have to be done by the city of Sandy. It can be done by a separate group.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, and I would support that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Jigs.
Well, but I think the idea that, that we're gonna insist that they come up with $25,000 is a little bit aspirational.
I would entertain funding that from the council if a well-organized entity were to come in here and make a pitch.
And that funding could certainly be, the city playing middleman to pay for a survey, a community-wide survey or something like that, not just cutting a blank check to
Right.
an organization of
Right.
community members, right, but actually tying it to a tangible
Polling.
product.
Well, and I
polling
would,
data or
I would
something.
want some actual numbers, and I'm kind of with Don with the surveys, because the fire district did a survey also and was also very confident.
Yeah.
That the outcome was gonna be different, so I'm kind of with Don I'm not sure. Surveys used to be pretty accurate, I'm not sure how accurate they are today.
Is this something that we could wait 6 months on and revisit and just see if the economy, if everything feels different within our community? Maybe just. Cause it feels a little tone deaf right now.
Mhm.
But maybe in a few months.
Well, I think there's, like I said, I think there's the possibility of starting to gather, it does need to be, I agree with you all. It does need to be grassroots. It needs to be, it can't be just us and the city. It's gotta be all these other people that really want it and are gonna work for it, because we don't have the staff, we don't have the money, all that, so.
And so a couple things, I think, to Kathleen's point in here, that one of the key things missing is the Parks and Rec director. I don't think we can, to your point, like, it's gotta wait till at least that. And then give that person a chance to get under the shoes under them. The second thing is I disagree with the polling. I do think there's mechanisms out there to get a more accurate poll. I don't think the fire service used it, and I don't know what the school board did. But I do believe that there's more accurate polling data out there and abilities. But I do know it costs money. With that being said, though, I think the reason those failed is the institutions that ran them were both ran by the fire district and the school board. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of trust in government to use the money correctly. And thus, those failures are reflected there.
The city falls in that category.
I 100% agree, and that's what I was gonna say. I don't think us championing it is gonna be a super successful ordeal where. But I do think that looking for key stakeholders is super important and something that should be done. And then also we need to figure out what does the scope of the district even look like. So I think there is some movement that we can make. I don't want to give up the money and just throw it back into the general fund. I think having it allocated there, one holds a placeholder there, keeps it meaningful. But I do think there is some more economical forward movement that we can do and should continue.
But we have a year and a half to spend that money. So a
No, we
6 month
don't.
pause wouldn't do anything.
That's the government mindset right there. It's not going anywhere. We can always roll it over into the next budget.
So we have more than a year. My point is, we have lots of
Yeah.
time to spend that
The
money.
point is, we don't have to decide.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying we had to spend it. I'm like, no.
He's
Okay,
just saying we
Thank
don't
you
need
for
to be in a
painting me
hurry.
into that corner.
Yeah, no, I hope that we keep, but I do want to keep the money dedicated because I do think that is a meaningful placeholder for it.
Oh, I wouldn't advocate moving it. Right?
So can we defer?
Oh, well, we have to wait until we have a Parks and Rec director number one, and then they have to get their feet under their.
As far as direction for staff on this one,
Yeah, I mean, it's not
We're all-
anything for.
we
the
can park
next-
this as the
3
future
months.
category for moving
Yeah.
forward.
As I've mentioned before, I'm gonna try to do these sort of council goal updates or work sessions every 6 months anyways, so we can certainly, if it doesn't naturally advance before that 6 month period, it'll advance in that 6 month time frame when I bring this back for you, so we'll park it for now and finish tying up some loose ends internally and
I think, for the city and the funding and all that, that's, we've got to wait. But I think that finding the stakeholders that really are passionate about it is something that all of us can do to kind of start putting the list together of folks that
Absolutely.
work well with the public and have the trust of their user groups and things like that. So I think
And to that point, Mayor, I would just say, if you all have individuals that you'd like us to sort of put on a list but not communicate with yet about potential, stakeholders to invite, you can send those my way. I'll keep just an ongoing list or document with those individuals' names, so that we don't lose track of who we're recommending or thinking might be a good fit for that.
Okay.
The next item, take action to update the city's zoning map. So we have $50,000 set aside in the existing budget to update the zoning map. But there's, I think, a need for some clarification on what the intended outcome or objective of this actual goal is. Talked a little bit to Kelly or with Kelly about this, and he may come up to shed some light as we dive into this topic a little bit more. I think one potential first step is just creating a new sort of developed property map. So not just what it's zoned as, but what it was actually developed as, and sort of start painting that picture of here's what it's zoned, but here's what was actually built. I know the mayor had some strong ideas initially on the need for this, so I don't want to. I just took a
In
bite,
the comp plan,
but
over and over again. So
That was the
when we
sales,
got to the end of the process and that wasn't one of the steps, I was just kind of going,
that was the sales
Yeah.
pitch.
so.
so.
But that's why I don't mean to kick it back to you right in the middle of a bite, but I think, I think you have an idea of what you'd like to see. And so I want to make sure that we capture that as well.
But we also are under a moratorium. And so, to some extent that dampens and lessens the need to be doing this. But my concern is, in this process that we were talking about for the future, will we be having anybody coming forward with proposed zone changes? And I don't think we are with that, the one option that we're looking at. So, maybe that's not a necessary thing, but I think trying to anticipate when that happens, what would be the process that we use to assess it? Because what I don't want us to do is what we've done in the past and just kind of willy-nilly, whatever they ask for, sure, yeah, okay. Because when you change it here, it changes the whole balance. And so that's the concern I have, is how do we have that assessment that ensures that we have a balance?
Kelly, do you want to come up
Yeah,
just
I-
briefly and talk
I
about?
have like 4 or 5 in a row here, so I
Yeah.
might sit up there.
I mean, I think it would be helpful for you to kind of shed some light on the balance that the mayor was just talking about as far as, the housing capacity analysis and how that, if one thing gets built over here that wasn't zoned as this, how that impacts the other numbers.
Can you start with your role or?
Oh, yeah, I'm the development services director, so I oversee planning and building and some of the code enforcement. Yeah, so we typically rely on the housing capacity analysis that now we are mandatorily required to do every 8 years. And the economic opportunities analysis that shows our surplus or deficit of different zoning designations. So by state law, if you're changing something, let's just say from R3 to R2, you can't bring either one of those into a deficit with the modification. So that's kind of like the high level, like first bar that you have to pass when you come in for a zone change, is if you can even accomplish that or not. And then after that, you just have to make sure you can meet the different criterion within the development code. There's a whole section on it. I don't know them off the top of my head, but there are some development code criterion you had to meet. But at the end of the day, I think zone changes are one of the most, I'd say probably the second most discretionary land use process that you guys have. I think the number one would be annexations. And I think zone changes would be number 2. You have a lot of discretion. You can deny them as long as we say why we deny them and put those in the findings of fact. Or you can approve them. I do agree with the mayor that I think in the past it's been pretty nilly-willy. It's like somebody comes and it's like, oh, I really want to develop this property, so I want a zone change. And I think for better or worse, more times than not, they've been approved. So I would agree with that I think we could be a little bit more strategic about when we do approve them. I see her comment about every 3 to 5 years. I think some cities actually do that, but typically they do it like every year. It's like it's kind of like a grant cycle. Everybody submits their zone change requests, and then we would analyze them all as like a group and together, and then you could pick and choose which ones you want to approve or deny. I do like that idea. And I think some other communities do that with annexations currently. So I don't see, unless Josh feels otherwise, why we couldn't do that with zone changes and comprehensive plan changes.
Is doing it once a year too much? I mean. we
Could be.
don't Get that many, so that's why I kind of thought, obviously, we're probably not gonna get any here for the next few years, so
I mean, I would say,
whatever you think, yeah.
yeah, once or twice. I don't think you'd want to do them I think every biennium you'd want to at least give people a chance. I think every 2 years you definitely want a chance.
And then do the annexation at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, there are cities that do annexation requests once a year or twice a year. We don't have that in our code. I believe when I started here, we did have it in our code that twice a year, the city council would hear annexation requests and either decide to annex or not. That's though back in the day when voter approved annexations were also part of the code. So that was all kind of taken out and re-massaged, but I'm fine if you guys want to head back in that direction. It makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways.
But is there a need for it? Because it's not like we've got people banging down our doors to annex. So, I mean, it'd be one thing if we had a whole bunch come in, I could see that you'd want to streamline that a little bit. I just don't know if it's.
I don't think we're even allowed to annex them under a moratorium. are we?
Right.
No, you can.
Can now.
Yeah, you can
The
now.
initial moratorium did
If
not
we
allow.
have capacity.
No, we had the initial moratorium, like Tyler just said, did not allow for annexations or zone changes actually. And then I don't know which one it was. It was either moratorium 2.0 or 3.0. We changed it to allow annexations and zone change requests again.
But we haven't gotten in.
No.
And that's kind of my.
Who wants to,
Like,
yeah.
So I just wanted,
Yeah.
so when you first brought this up, I thought you were looking for some sort of proactive zone map change. And I don't even know if that's a thing. Is that still something that we're to talk about, or are we just to more of somebody else's request, a landowner is requesting a zone change? Are we only to that side of it now?
Well, again, I thought it was going to be done as part of the comp plan and that people would be reached out to. And anybody who was interested in changing their zone at that time would be given an opportunity to do so. That didn't happen. And then I was told at the end that, it's just going to be kind of, willy-nilly. They're just going to come and ask. And again, that's what, makes it difficult because I have been around for, 30 some odd years. And I know they did say yes to everyone. And most of them were going from single family or R1 to R2 and 3, a lot of R3. So,
But now we
Which-
have the quotas that we have to stay within. So we'd have some
Right.
protections in
right,
place
but
now. we
I
didn't.
still think, what I can get concerned about is all those neighbors out there off of Melissa, Amber. The Antler, thank you. First letter, right? All those folks, they weren't assuming that they were gonna have a bunch of apartments, 192 units out there. So that's the kind of surprises that I don't think, I don't like doing. And I think it's just really important to kind of have a process and then, the ability to kind of, the tendency is for a city council to say yes to somebody asking for something. And so having a clear process about when we would want to say yes. And I know it comes into those bigger numbers, but there might be some additional criteria that we want to look at, like out there, they were way out far from transit. And so putting, apartments out there when you don't even have sidewalks going down Highway 26, maybe wasn't the best call. So those are the kind of things that I'd like to kind of see us pursue. Not, again, doesn't have to be in the next year and a half. I would like to kind of see, I do know that there was a lot of subdivisions that were zoned as SFR and R1 and actually developed out with a density of more like R2. So having an actual
But without a zone
as
change.
built. What?
But without a zone
Yeah,
change
there were-
or with a
Right.
zone change?
Yeah, the mayor's correct. There was a lot of, I think it went both ways, to be honest. Like there was quite a few properties that were low density that developed at a higher density. and quite a few properties that were high density that developed as single family homes. And that's mainly because we used to allow the planned developments. And that's how the majority of that happened. Since then, you guys have gotten rid of planned developments, so I don't foresee that occurring anymore. However, because of new state legislation, I think it's still gonna kind of bounce around. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of zones out there where if you looked at the underlying zoning district, you'd scratch your head and think, how does that have what it has today?
So as far as the zoning, Kelly, two questions. One, how does some of the legislation that's been passed regarding housing affect what we can and can't do with zones? A, and then B, wouldn't this be something that we would want to take a look at our housing study and kind of plot out as far as our needs assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think you'll find that especially in 8 years from now, when we have to adopt the owner measures, if that's still a state requirement at that time, they're gonna force us the Oregon housing needs analysis measures that if we adopt the HPS, and I'll be talking about that later tonight. If we adopt that by the end of December, we kind of have a get out of jail free card. We're not gonna have to do that for the next 8 years. But in 2034, when we had to do that, the state, if that's still a state measure at that point, we're gonna have to do more density is what we're gonna end up having to do. And so if you look at our HCA numbers where it's saying probably the closest I think to lacking is like R2 land, I think industrial land, I believe. So yeah, I think you'd want to look at that as kind of a guidebook before you made any changes.
How long would it take to just kind of do a as-built type, what it actually developed as?
Well, it wouldn't be me doing it, so I don't want to commit somebody
Well,
else.
It's kind of a GIS exercise.
It is, so, and that's AJ's employee, but I think realistically, I would hope by like spring, we could probably put something together. I don't even think that would take any money, like it would just be internal money, but we wouldn't have to hire a consultant for that. And we could do that if you so choose, that's
I think It would
fine.
be helpful to just know what because again, if we are saying that we are low on the R2 and then we assess it and find out quite a bit of that R1 got developed as R2 and it's, not, and not that I want to open up the whole, HCN and all that.
I mean, I think if nothing else, what that will do in the future is when we do have the owner regulations imposed on us,
Yes,
we'll be able to push back a little bit and say, we actually have more density than these numbers are showing.
I like building the inventory part of that whole HPS data so that we don't have to go recreate it. And so we keep that current. And then every time a zone change comes to us, we can compare those numbers, see if it's pushing us in any direction we don't want to go. And we'll have the data for the next iteration.
Yeah, I think no matter where this goes long term, the first step is to have some good data on what was actually constructed. And so that seems like a logical first step anyways. If it's going to take a few months for us to do that, we could certainly compile that and schedule a work session in the spring just to recap kind of where we're at today and then discuss next steps beyond that. See some heads nodding. So, okay.
And last thing, as far as an open season for zone changes and things like that, I just want to be cautious that we don't put an artificial barrier for economic development. We want to jump.
And that was kind of where I was going.
So if we do an open season, we want to have a carve out or we'll take on whatever we want for whatever reason.
So to get clarity on that, is that something you would like to see brought back to you in the next like 6 months to a year? Or is that something you guys want to kind of discuss as a group more before you give me direction on what to do? For the seasons for zone changes and annexations and stuff like that.
Seems like we're still early with the moratorium,
I think we got time.
I'll wait.
Yeah.
Thank you.
unless you don't have anything to do.
No, I have stuff to do.
If you're bored, Kelly, we
I think we can revisit, we'll circle back to that question after we talk about the next 3 or 4
But I
items.
can't imagine we're gonna get annexation proposals when they don't have the development ability,
Right.
so.
Possibly commercial industrial, but yeah, not housing.
And
Yeah,
those
not-
we want to look at anyways.
Exactly.
All right, thank you for your feedback on that one. Next up is 6.4, revisit the Pleasant Street Master Plan with minimal reliance on consulting services. So I think there's 2 questions that need to be answered initially, and that is 1, does this group need sort of a recap of what the Pleasant Street Master Plan is, where we're at with that? Or do we want to move to a discussion around advance it or kill it? If I'm being just direct and
Can I
blunt.
just ask this group a blunt question? Is there anybody who supports moving forward with it?
I truly did not until I went back and watched one of the council meetings from 3 years ago where they talked about it, and I'm a little bit on board now. And that's my street.
That's
That's,
a cool idea.
Was
It
that the
is a good
part
idea.
where before Leathers changed ownership that we talked about shift on the road?
which I don't love. Yeah, that part, but just and that it fits right into the safe routes to school, that all of that I'm now supportive of revisiting.
I'm not, I mean, I can support revisiting it lightly. I think it needs to be looked at in light of the overall transportation plan and the fact that we're not going to get a bypass. I'm going to pose it that way. I mean, love to have a bypass, but we're not going to get a bypass. Traffic's going to get bigger. I think those two plans need to integrate somehow. I mean, I'm not talking 5 years or 10 years out, but I'm talking 20, 30, 40 years out. There's too much traffic in 2 lanes to keep the downtown corridor the way it is safely. So if you just do the expansion and you go out 30 years, that means you're going to widen that to another lane or 2. And what does that mean for your downtown corridor? And if that happens, what does it mean to your north and south sides of the city? And then Pleasant Street could become the new Main Street. And I think we have to have that kind of outlook when we're talking about Pleasant Street. We can't just look at it as a 5 or 10 year program. And I won't be here to see that.
I think the Pleasant Street Master Plan, as it was initially sort of presented to council, was expensive with a lot of different project components, right? So there's probably a Pleasant Street light master plan that doesn't involve all the undergrounding of utilities, but does include like the walkability improvements and the bike improvements and
And
pedestrian
sidewalks.
safety improvements.
Yeah.
Maybe some of the not road realignment, but I think there was a discussion around realigning the crosswalk that comes out of the library.
Yep.
And so I think there's some good objectives that could come out of that, or good results that could come out of that. Pleasant Street Master Plan as a whole, though, is that's a good chunk of your urban renewal money that would likely be sunk into a very small portion of town.
And it wouldn't solve
And
that
it would-
20 and 30 year problem at all.
Exactly. So I think we
And it
could
wouldn't bring us
revisit
any
it.
tax, back.
Very little, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it could be revisited in that sort of Pleasant Street light idea. What can you do to make it more walkable, safer for kids, families, neighbors, whatever? And, make some movement without implementing the whole thing.
Chris has his hand up. Chris
Oh.
has his hand up.
Thank you.
I have a big yellow hand. It's standing right
Oh,
behind
thanks, Lori. I just wanted to add what Lindy said. I do believe revisiting the Pleasant Street Master Plan is important because it's for shaping the future development of that area specifically. And while I wasn't on city council when we did it the first time, I do think, given our current circumstances, that we could re-engage it, at least specifically with the emphasis on minimum reliance on consulting services to control the costs of it, right? And maybe that's that lighter version you talked about, Tyler. So I would encourage staff to prepare an updated scope and cost estimates, and we could probably put together another work session to discuss it further to see if that Pleasant Street light version, is worth moving forward with. But I wouldn't want to scrap the whole idea based on the proximity of that street and where it's at to downtown, where it's at to the school. So I would be supportive of scheduling that work session to discuss it further before we finalize any decision on the money for that. That's just what I would say.
The last thing I would add, and Kelly, you might want to add some context here too, but the Pleasant Street Master Plan as it stands right now isn't really a master plan document. So there is still quite a bit of work that would need to be done to create the official document that we would need to adopt. I think we could probably pretty easily revise the cost estimates that are in there and then come back with a work session to talk about the different components of that project. I don't know what your thoughts are on,
We could revise them, I think, as long as we're not burying power lines, because that's something that nobody on staff has expertise with. That would take a consultant to get revised estimates for that.
and to be fair, that was about 75% of
Yeah.
the overall project cost.
At least 60, yeah. It
Um,
was a lot.
I just feel like since we don't really have anything other than our urban renewal money, and we've got, you know, the 362nd Bell, and we've got the property we own there, you know, already, you know, if we were gonna be doing some planning and spending, you know, doing a kind of master plan planning, I'd like to see us doing it there on Pleasant, because that's kind of the priority. Now, I think it's helpful to kind of relook at the plan, because I know some of y'all, I don't even remember everything in it. I do remember the plan, the line, varying the lines, safe routes to schools, a few other things. So we can kind of look at it, see if there are a few things in there that we want to kind of carry through before you go updating the costs, because that's, you know, don't update costs on things that we're not going to proceed with. But I would like to see us start having some sort of progress here in the next year to 2 years about what we plan to do with the property we have there. That's a pretty important part of the Pleasant Street. And that's an opportunity where, you know, if we put money into it, we could get the money back. So,
Can I add two quick comments?
Uh-huh.
I do think Counselor Hanley's correct. We could bank on some of that safe routes to school money on this next item to cover some of the expenses on Pleasant Street, not a couple $100,000, I would actually anticipate. So I do think there's some value in that. And then the only other thing I was going to say, when this project first kind of came to light as a project was in 2012. So a year after I started working here, it was actually kind of led by Scott Lazenby, the city manager at the time. And he was very into undergrounding utility lines like they did on Pioneer. And so that's why that was a big component of it, because that kind of carried all the way through to 2017 when we did it. So I just wanted to give everybody a historical context on that.
Can I ask, do we need, you said it doesn't have all the elements of a master plan. Is there anything that's forcing us to create a master plan? Or can we just call it plan?
I think master plan is just a term that gets
Okay,
thrown
so
around.
we,
because
so we
it's
just
a
need to
term-
bring it up to a quality
I
we
think just a
want.
plan.
Yeah, so we don't have to add the boilerplate fluff and all the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, I think we could simplify it if that's the direction you get. I mean, I would love that.
And then to
Be a lot less work.
Chris's point, you're not talking about consulting.
With some of it. Is there anybody
With all
who
coaching.
wants the
Potentially.
full book, or, I mean, he's,
I think there's, you know, a handful of safe routes to school projects that, you know, that are city's responsibility, because there's quite a few in there that are schools' responsibility. And then I believe that there's no appetite for moving alt like Clackamas County Bank and all that, so.
And
And
that-
the undergrounding is too expensive. I don't remember other projects, but again, I would like to kind of, you know, at some point, whether we do it with this plan or another plan, kind of start, you know, talking in the next year or so about possible, you know, some of that's John Lagarza is working with economic development folks and kind of thinking about, you know, hotels or whatever. I don't, you know, and who knows what the potential is there. That's, you know, he's working on a lot of different places. So it would just be nice at some point to start having a discussion about that.
are you okay with a trimmed down our plan as opposed to a more typical master plan for this?
Yeah,
Okay.
And I would definitely.
as long as we're including that
Yeah.
parcel, because that's, you know, I don't think we had, you know, it's like, I don't even know if we had that land. What, like, you guys probably had that land.
I think we had just purchased it when
Yeah,
we started
you know,
it.
so there's just a lot of different things that kind of led us to where we are now, so.
And John would definitely be involved. I just wanted to give you a heads up on that.
We could certainly schedule information work session in early 2026, just to kind of talk about the 4 or 5 different scopes that were outlined in that, if there's interest. I'm seeing some heads nodding, so,
Or just
Why don't
send it
we
out to us
plan
again
on
as a
that?
reminder to read, you know?
or yeah, I can just like link it to in the weekend update so you can all refresh your memory on what's included.
I always read your weekend update.
Perfect. I can send it out in a separate email as
No,
well if
it's
you'd
good.
rather.
It's good.
Um,
Sorry.
I think there's some general consensus, though, that the undergrounding of utilities and the realignment of alt are probably not components that there's strong.
They're not financially
favoritism.
feasible right now, right?
Right. They're not financially feasible right now, and there's at least with one of those projects that I just mentioned, a
The landowner
uphill
problem?
battle with, you know,
Mhm.
property owners and neighboring businesses that I think would be a challenge to overcome.
Like I said, with the urban renewal money, yeah, I'm looking at where we can use that to get, to get money back, not to just, do something that isn't going to
Seed money.
generate,
Well, and I think, much of the work that's not undergrounding utilities and not realignment of the road, but some of those pedestrian improvements and street improvements also has a street fund funding source and a partnership with the school district as well. So, I don't think it needs to be full bore urban renewal by any means. There could be some grant components to, assist some property owners in bringing up their properties that are along that street potentially, but there's other funding avenues beyond just urban renewal district for some of the work that needs to happen over there.
Thanks.
Chris, do you have any more thoughts on it?
No, I was going to talk about the next one.
Okay.
Well, apply for an ODOT Safe Routes to School grant with cooperation and financial contributions from the Oregon Trail School District. Counselor Mayton.
I'll just throw my comment out there first. I do like this one, but I think there needs to be a very heavy emphasis on cooperation and financial contribution from Oregon Trail School District, because it will provide equal match and demonstrate community support and shared investment in something that we both want. I know that we need to fund this, but I think I would love to have OTSD right there with us doing this. And I don't know how prevalent that's been in our past, but I think it's been minimal cooperation between the city and them over the long term, at least from what I recall.
I would be shocked to have them pony up money at this point in time, given the bond failure, because they're going to be in a world of hurt.
So full disclosure, this is not something that Superintendent Bayer and I have discussed, but I can certainly add it to the list of topics for our next
I'd love to
meeting
be
that we have. So, I can certainly, pose the question and see if there's any alignment or partnership that we can develop with
No.
this specifically.
Maybe it helps our case for a grant being aligned, but I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of money from them.
And maybe it's too soon, but is ODOT actually gonna have money for grants? I mean,
Well, that's,
you have to throw a little curveball there.
yeah.
So,
I think it's a great question that I don't have an answer to. But let me reach out to Oregon Trail School District and see if there is any interest in a partnership on this. If there is, fantastic, and we'll see how that conversation goes. If there is not, then maybe there's potential for another work session to kind of go through the various projects that were listed in that 2020 planning document, and we can figure out what areas we want to hit.
If there is not, can we get a why?
So yeah,
I want to know why my kids going to that school wouldn't want to talk to our city about safe routes to school.
well, I don't want to, I don't mean to imply that there won't be a conversation about
understand.
it, but I hear your point, and I can make sure I get a why if the answer is no.
Well, I also want to say that when this came out, I was I was in the meetings with the district when they were talking about parents, and there was tons of support. I mean, from my perspective, from the district, and being really excited about it, and then we ran into the pandemic, so I think it's money, right?
I will say OTSD was the co-applicant on the planning work that we did with them in 2020. And when we did apply for the grant, I think it was in 2021, when we came in like one place out of getting the money, they were in support and they said they were going to contribute. Now, what that amount was, I was never told, but they were a willing participant, at least at that time.
Are some of these projects that are on a Safe Routes to Schools in the TSP?
They are now, because the Safe Routes to School planning document was done in 2020. And then when we updated the TSP in 2023, we incorporated them into there.
Yeah.
They weren't in the 2011 TSP, the old one.
Now, part of that whole Safe Routes to Schools is the whole school pickup drop-off stuff, because that's one of the bigger, that and the speed limit and all that are kind of things that need to get fixed.
Is it difficult that there have been some changes since the Safe Routes to School? There have been some changes to the way that drop-off works at Sandy Grade. Pickup and drop-off, the busing is totally different routes than it was at the time of the.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think when this was developed, they were utilizing that front parking lot of the old middle school for their bus lineup, I think it was, right?
They were, bus pickup was right in front of the
Oh, right in
school
front of
and
the
now
school.
it's a block, now it's in front of the
Yeah.
community campus.
We'll look into that and see if there's substantial conflict or differences between what this plan discusses and what's currently happening. And get back to you with
So
that.
maybe kind of have a future workshop on the highest priority projects. I mean, we can't do them all, but kind of figure out, at least one for each, school.
I do think at the time we did, I would have to go back into the planning document from 5 years ago, but I think when we did do it, there was an emphasis on that. Do not plan on using the city property that we purchased from the school district any longer because there'll be something there eventually. So I do believe that was noted in that document.
And I think, Kelly, you mentioned this, there's a couple items on here for Sandy Grade, for example, that I would imagine would be covered under a Pleasant Street master plan, like installing an 8-foot wide sidewalk. Well, it's on Pleasant Street, so I would venture to guess that
Sidewalk?
install an 8-foot sidewalk with the Sandy Grade prioritized projects in the Safe Routes to School plan. So, I imagine there's probably quite a bit of overlap from some of those pedestrian improvements
Oh,
that
yeah.
the Pleasant Street master plan outlined and what's in here. So I think we can do a little bit more work on our end to see where that alignment is. If there's any changes with the drop-off changes that have been made, I'll reach out to OTSD and see if we can advance a partnership on some of these projects. And then we can have another work session about where we're at and how to prioritize and move forward from there.
We also have those, a couple light up crossing signals there, like what we put by the football field.
Yeah,
So there's a real desire to have those because it just helps people slow down.
and those are relatively, I don't want to
Cheap,
say they're
yeah,
cheap,
$5,000,
but they're relatively
$6,000.
inexpensive to install
Yeah.
as long as the infrastructure underground is there. And if it's not, then you can get solar. So,
Yeah.
I think that's another,
We know it's overhead.
yeah, we do know it's overhead. That's true.
So, yeah, that's.
That's where it's gonna
so let's
stay.
kind of pursue that.
Okay, thank you for that one. Next up is 6.7, develop policies and pursue funding opportunities to make the community more resilient against wildfire and other natural hazards. So we've sort of dipped our toe in this. The first step was updating those outdoor burning code regulations. We just did that 2 weeks ago. Yeah, wow. Beyond that initial work, there's some other ideas that include building code modifications to assist with implementing fire resilient building materials, development code modifications to assist with secondary route planning for emergencies, defensible space standards within the landscaping section of the code. So that's sort of, our internal ideas, Kelly's internal ideas. I want to give him credit for kind of being the mind behind some of these ideas that we have currently. But I guess just kind of getting a gut check from the council, is there anything that we haven't identified on this list that you'd like to see prioritized? Are you happy with some of these ideas that we have here? We can move forward with proposing some code amendments. Or did you have something entirely different in
The
mind?
city accountable to defensible space as well? In all of its buildings,
Well,
And parklands.
like this one comes to mind.
Yeah, I don't know if you.
what about this building is problematic?
I thought this was gonna go a little different direction.
Well, please, let's dive into
Not-
that,
Not
because
to
that's,
say this wouldn't be good but I was thinking more about in terms of our wildfires that we've had recently and our evacuations and things like that, we would be looking at more clear identification of at-risk areas. I don't think every area in town has the same risk, so to do a blanket code requirement for everybody, I don't think is appropriate. I think we have to
So-
target the right areas. If you're living along Bluff, where the mayor, my parents do, there's a huge issue with fires coming up out of the river. Maybe I would think they would need a different solution than maybe, at my house.
Potentially, the one thing I will say about that is the state tried that with their Oregon fire rating map. And it flopped because a lot of those people that were rated high risk were gonna lose their homeowners insurance.
Yes.
And nobody was gonna backfill the
Yeah,
homeowners
that's what I was
insurance.
gonna say.
Yeah.
You have to-
But-
You have to be
It's a
very
very good
careful
point.
with that.
I don't think you,
Infringing
I would love to do what you're
upon
saying, but I don't think
insurance.
you can because of insurance.
What about for new developments?
And I guess that's kind of, I'm sorry, Captain, in there.
I'm just curious about new developments. Could we, I like, you know, if it's kind of along Tickle Creek or something like that, where, you know, you got Steep Canyon or whatever, and it's a natural open space. Is that something for a new development you could require? And I would assume there's already
I'm not sure.
existing code around the state that has all this stuff about using hardy plank and, you know.
Yeah, no, you can definitely, I think, define. I mean, we would have to be careful, but I think you could define different parts of town of having different building code standards or different defensible space standards. But I don't think you would want to make a map identifying higher risk areas,
No, I
because
don't
those
wanna-
areas wouldn't get insurance.
I don't want to repeat that fiasco. You're right. Thank you for pointing that out.
And then how would our guidelines, the city's guidelines mesh with individual insurance companies?
There's my next question.
It's
Because
tricky.
State Farm sent me a letter, said, hey, what kind of roof do you have? When was it replaced after? It was like last year. And I had to come up with receipts when we replaced the roof, because we did it. And what kind of roof it was, and I'm assuming they had a drone, because they sent me a picture of my roof. So
Yeah, I think
You know-
this is dangerous.
yeah,
So the one thing I will pause on that. So I was on the State of Oregon Wildfire Task Force. I was like one of 22 people that met for a couple of years in a row. I think if we choose to do nothing though, and I'm not saying anybody's suggesting this, but if we choose to do nothing or very little, not only will that put the community at more wildfire risk, but I think it will actually put our residents at more risk of losing their insurance. So I think you have to kind of walk the line and do something to show that we're making the community more fire resilient for insurance purposes, but not create something like the state of Oregon tried to do.
So
I would want to talk to an insurance expert before I walk down that road.
Well, I think
go ahead.
a lot of this conversation that we had during this was around the egress routes and the narrowness of our roads and the fact that it'd be hard to get emergency equipment back there and all of that. And then the building code requirements. What can we do to make it more defensible and against fire? I don't think I think we should stay completely out of the insurance world. And then I think, so to your point, Kelly, I think we are doing something without going down this road. The other piece is, I think if you go start changing people's current standards and dabbling in their worlds right now without some real big justification, I think you're kind of opening up Pandora's box for yourself as well.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know how you make this retroactive on folks that already have existing homes and things.
Yeah, I don't see it applying to existing homes. I thought we were just talking about building code changes for future development.
That's what I was talking
And
about.
whether you want to make that, blanket change, or you want to do it in just strategic areas where you have adjacent steep slopes or something like that. The other thing, though, I think that we can do, like, you said, we're talking about the egress and things like that. I think that's just a good coordination exercise for our emergency management plan, working with the Clackamas Fire. But the third part of that also is just working with some of our, the Ant Farm fuels reduction group that is already working up the highway, and we're part of that. And just letting residents know that if they do want to create, have somebody come in and talk to them about defensible space, that's something that there's grant funds already available for them to come in and, do the assessment and then also help reduce the fuels in that defensible space. So just kind of more of a, volunteer opportunity for folks that are interested in that.
And I'd be curious too, there was, but to Lori's point, I don't know, I think the grant world is going to change dramatically in the very near future. But there was grant money out there for, helping to fund projects, especially if you partnered with the fire department. So I know some communities around were partnering with the fire department or other community partners to run, debris disposal, cleanup areas and such. I'd like us to explore that too. Is there money out there, for example, our chipper? Is there money that we could use to, help get that utilized and not just people's debris, but, even maybe a little more broad than that?
That's what that Ant Farm fuels reduction.
Mhm.
group,
That's-
they have
that's
their
one
own
example.
shipper,
Mhm.
and then the also Clackamas Fire has an engine, a field forestry engine, for wildfire stuff. So are you saying that we should get a grant and do our own thing, or?
I'm saying we should explore it and see what's out there. I'm not saying that, I don't know if that's what it is, and maybe it's doing it in partnership with Ant Farm and they can expand their program. But yeah.
Kelly, when those burn codes were updated in the last 6 months, wasn't there written in, I know the space went up and the acreage went up, but wasn't there space guidelines between structures updated and also the slope, the percentage of
Yeah.
the slope?
Yeah, that was
How
included
many
in there.
feet it could be adjusted. So we've done,
For outdoor burning.
yeah, so we've done,
For intentional burns.
yeah, for
Yeah.
intentional burns.
Yeah, I think this is mainly for new builds, like you were saying. I do want to say though that say we have a building that's going through a building permit to put on different materials. We would want it to be triggered at that stage as well for an existing home. So if somebody has cedar shake on their existing home and they're tearing it off and they're putting, a new plywood roof on and then new cedar shake, we would want to say, no, it's not permitted in the city of Sandy any longer. That's how I envision it, at least. We'd want them to go to composition or metal.
I get the impression that insurance companies are thinking the same thing.
Oh, 100%.
I mean,
And I guess that's kind of what I keep going back to in my
Yeah.
mind is that I feel like, well, I get your point and I don't disagree that, we could look at certainly some things and I'm 100% not advocating that we do nothing. But a lot of what we're talking about on this is between the homeowner and the insurance company, and insurance companies are already having these conversations with their homeowners. And whether or not that you can even get insurance, especially in some areas around us, is very challenging if you don't do certain things. So, I mean, again, I know we've all said this, but I really want to stay out of the insurance world.
I agree and disagree with that. I think that,
That was clear.
huh?
That was really clear.
Thank you. I like to try to be as clear as possible. No, but we have building codes for a reason. Not everything should be just between you and your insurance.
No.
I do
that-
think that we have,
I apologize if I misled you to say that. That was not my intention at all. I'm not talking about building codes. I'm talking about some of the other stuff that's on this, so.
okay.
Yeah, secondary egress route planning, just so you know, that's like a big one for me because state fire code really doesn't anticipate wildfire when you talk about subdivision level. They say if it's, I forget the exact threshold, but I think if it's over 40 houses, well, if it's over 40 houses, then they require a secondary route. But if it's under 40 houses and the distance is greater than 150 feet, you can just use fire suppression systems in all the houses. Well, that's great for putting out a house fire, but it doesn't do anything for managing escape routes for wildfires that spread into those areas. So I'm hoping the state fire marshal's office actually comes up with some code changes around that, but they haven't yet. So
How will that play into the housing production? Because those extra egresses will remove our available.
yeah,
space.
might lose a lot. Yep.
Yeah. So just my only point on this, whatever we do code wise, I think we have to be very careful not to add significant cost, which would fly in the face of our HPS.
Could we call it not ignite Sandy?
Well, some of this kind of brings us even into the next conversation, which is center medians. Because that's impeding egress on several of our roads, so.
So, I want to go to that one too, but I guess the last question, are we ready to dive in? I'm sorry.
I wasn't trying to jump on.
No, I'm ready to go to that one. I just want to make sure that we have clear direction on this item with fire resiliency or wildfire resiliency.
Consensus on modifying building codes.
Sounds like we're open to it, but it didn't seem like it was an overwhelming priority.
We could certainly have this be one of those that we bring back in 6 months and just do a gut check and see where the wildfire and insurance landscape has gone and if any other communities have picked up work on, development code modifications or building code modifications and
That would only affect new subdivisions or houses in with a building permit to.
Major modifications to an existing house.
This one almost seems so broad that you could kind of dive into it and get down in the weeds a little more.
yeah.
It's pretty broad.
It's very broad. I mean, that's part of the reason why, we're back here tonight talking about it, because I think the intent is great, but the intent means something different to anyone that's reading it, right?
Right.
So that's what we're
I'd
trying
be
to
curious
figure out.
what cities like Grants Pass. Madras,
Some
some
are
of
more
those that
dry.
deal with constant annual wildfires, if they've made some code modifications.
They have,
I'm sure they have.
yeah.
just don't
Ashland's,
know what they-
Ashland's like leading it all.
And I guess it doesn't I mean, I kind of feel like our emergency management plan should have some of this stuff where you're coordinating with the fire folks, Clackamas Fire and.
I think it does, but I think the majority of what I remember in that plan, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of more reactionary.
It's 100% real.
It's not to
It's not
prepare
a
for it.
mitigation
Yeah,
plan. Yeah, it's a response.
So the building codes would be our mitigation.
correct. And the emergency preparedness action plan, or sorry, that might not be the term, but that would be the response plan.
I
Yeah.
mean, it would speak to evacuation routes.
Yeah, that's
things
what I mean,
like
like
that, but
secondary
not like
egress
building
and all
code
that kind of
issues.
stuff.
Right.
Right, but knowing what the secondary egress and then, I mean, I guess even just looking at that, you can kind of find out where you don't have stuff or it's totally overgrown and not passable by a vehicle.
And then not to just continue, but do we still have where if you develop or build a house, like you have to have a certain amount of vegetation and we tell you that you need a certain amount of trees and things like that, because that might be something to look at as well.
Not for a single family home.
We don't have.
All you have to
that
put
anymore?
in, all you have to do is put in street trees. And after that, you just have to make sure you don't have exposed soils. So we do not manage single family home landscaping besides the street trees and the planter strip. And the whole reason you can't have exposed soils is for erosion control and stormwater issues.
Well, and I guess I would make an argument even with the street trees, depending on how big they're gonna be and how close they are to the house, because like when I look across the street at my neighbor's house, and their limbs are on their roofs.
Yeah, street trees do play an important
Is there
factor in stormwater though. So I think we would be running the risk of having larger stormwater facilities and subdivisions without street trees.
But I think something to explore would be, potentially a grant program or some sort of citywide effort to say, hey, you have street trees. Hey, they're touching your house. How can we help facilitate the, this one-time pruning to get you into compliance to prevent some wildfire spread in the event of a wildfire? And that could be one of the concepts that comes out of this, research project that we do is what are other cities doing to help mitigate?
Yeah.
That's what they're doing up the highway then.
Yeah.
And
What
they said
do
they
they do with Doug firs and cedars? I mean, there's not a Doug fir or cedar that's over 20 years old that's not fire ready to go,
Yeah.
Counselor Ramsar and I have a good
Mine
company
goes
you
up
can
behind
use
my
if you
house.
need.
I'll lose
Yeah.
4 houses around me. It's
We've
just
had a
gonna
good
happen.
experience with them.
And there's some things that we can't necessarily mitigate completely, or maybe accept that there's some inherent risk by having it in our yard, but getting the bushes that are touching your, walls and the tree limbs that are touching your roof.
Sure.
Well, it
moved
feels like
is
we're kind of down in the weeds and
All right.
bushes.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say, and it's 7:03.
Yep.
Should we go to medians?
Yeah, so center medians, the goal was to pursue solutions to challenges posed by center medians. I think this might be another topic that different people have a different interpretation of what the actual intent of the goal was. So I'd love just to pose the question of what did you all have in mind when this goal was identified? Was it to remove current medians?
Personal, yeah.
Counselor Mayton?
Sorry. I just remember something specific about it when we had our meeting was we were worried about, not just arterial lanes, but, behind the arterials and how we get transportation for emergency vehicles. So when I was thinking about this question, I came up with another question and I couldn't find it. I was wondering, instead of worrying so much about medians, maybe we worry about the building code for street width behind their arterial. And I don't know how big that is, because I think right now our street widths are between like 26 and 32 feet. And if you think about that, if you take the biggest width at 32, it's 16 foot aside. Well, that's 2 8-foot sections for an F-250's 8 feet wide, and a fire truck's 10 feet wide, minimal. So, you don't have enough space there. So maybe instead of worrying about medians, we worry about what the minimum width of a road is in subdivisions when we're building into the future. But that's just a thought.
I have a lot of thoughts about
Ditto
that.
My former comment about the HPS and what happens if we widen roads.
So in the TSP, we did widen the asphalt sections. We just haven't seen it played out yet because we haven't had a new subdivision since the TSP was adopted.
Do you remember offhand, Kelly, what the width went?
The right of way was widened by an additional 4 feet to accommodate wider sidewalks and additional 2 feet of asphalt. And we got public comments from the fire district and the Hood View disposal saying that that seemed adequate. So I don't know. We'd have to go back through that whole process, I think.
When we do this, and this might be too far, but is there a way? Because I like that and I forgot about that. And to me, this one actually kind of plays into the one above it too, a little bit to the egress and traffic and all of that. Is there a way that we could even look at the design though? You know, when I look at 362nd and Bell, right? There's no way. I think that's the one that triggered all of this. Some of it's just the design of the road too. So, you know, in an emergency, there's literally the curbs are so steep and there's just nothing on the backside that there's nowhere to go.
You can't drive over it.
You can't drive over it without
Yeah.
becoming a bigger problem. So I think some of even those designs, maybe it's not so much the median as opposed to even the side designs, so that in an emergency, something could be moved to get out of the way. And we didn't do that there.
Yeah, just to be honest, I didn't have any part in designing that roadway.
Neither did I.
Yeah. So the only area in our code that says you have to have medians is the Barnstead Village overlay. And we would have to change that overlay.
But what I
It's where?
remember,
In the Barnstead Village overlay, that has designated median roads.
So in our TSP and other plan, in our building code stuff, or development code, it doesn't have.
It's
It has cross sections and.
And the medians are optional. The only area that they're not optional is in the Barnstead Village plan that was created in 1997. So to get those out of there, we would have to adopt a new Barnstead Village plan.
So how do we get them? How come we have so many of them, like all around Sandy Bluff, for example?
I'm not sure.
is it,
I can't imagine that developer doing that voluntarily.
I don't know.
isn't it stormwater? I could have sworn that's what I was told.
Could
about
be
the other
partially
one.
that.
Well,
It had to do with stormwater.
I know the way the road was designed especially on Bell 362nd, if you took, the road is crowned for all the stormwater to go there. So if you took it out, it'd be a big mess.
Yeah.
You'd be redoing the whole road at that point because you'd have
Right, but
to.
you'd be designing the road to, have it go, it'd be crowned off to go to the side. So I think the proposal here was to modify that. I mean, if you say that it's optional, but yet I can't imagine them doing something that cost them a lot of money that was optional. So
It's optional. Every road we put in, they seem to put medians in, so I don't understand that.
They must save
I'm a little
money on
questioning
the
how optional it
water.
is.
So it's optional.
A big retention pond, that's
Yeah.
gonna be your choice, right?
It's optional in the sense that the code doesn't require it, but for that particular developer, for instance, and I won't mention names. But that was like a planning commission decision. So I think the planning commission probably, I would have to go back through the files, but I think they probably conditioned medians.
Yeah.
Is my guess of what happened.
Well, I think, the challenge here for me, I guess, is visibility, but also just maintenance. It's just like we just keep adding to the maintenance of what we have to keep up every time we put another one in. And so I would rather see us shunt the stormwater off to the side where it's the street tree or the, it's just the vegetation and the planter strip that takes the water so that we're not kind of responsible for it. Because once you put it in the middle of the road, it's sitting. If it's on the side, it's the homeowner. So. And it is 16 feet wide, Chris, the bell, it's 16 feet either side.
Both sides.
What would that be now? You said it was extended, so if it's 16 now,
So
16 built at 16, what would it be now for it to do the same thing?
Bell's either a collector or arterial, so I don't know what it would be off the top of my head because there's like a range of how wide. Local streets would be 30-foot asphalt section. The arterials and collectors are variable widths.
Okay, but we say 30-foot asphalt section. Does that include the median in the middle? Because that
We don't
takes-
have any medians on local streets in Sandy,
Yeah.
just on arterials and collectors. I don't know of a single local street with a median. There might be one out there, but I can't think of one.
And you're saying it's a range?
Yeah, so the arterials and collectors are arranged based on if you're putting in bike lanes, based on if you're putting in on-street parking, based on if you're putting in medians. So there's a range on how wide you go with the street section.
Let's kind of plan on, maybe considering our options at a workshop here next spring to see. It's not like we're gonna be doing a bunch of new development here in the near future, so we've got a little time.
Let's be very cautious about moving anything forward with new meetings.
Right. Yeah. But I think part of that is just looking at what the code says now and.
Yeah, we can bring back a document that
Yeah.
clearly outlines what the code says, what discretion staff or planning commission have on requiring those medians.
So, for example, on Bull Run Terrace, DeBarco Road was
Exactly.
going to have a median. We never conditioned it. They just showed it. The developer did. Then the Public Works Department decided they didn't want a median for a lot of the reasons that have been stated. And we told the developer, please remove it from your construction plans, and they have since done so. So, just to let you know.
Yeah, and might have just done it to make it look even all the way through, which makes sense, but.
It's nice looking, but I agree with all of you. There's a lot of issues with them.
Yeah. If money was no object.
Exactly.
Community awards program?
Yeah, thank you. So this is the last one on my list. Establish a community awards program to honor significant contributions and achievements. So I guess for this item, looking on, a desired timeline for this goal, or if there's any sort of, kickoff ideas, if you have a program that another community has used that you say, I want to mimic that we can go and copy, or any other feedback you have before we spend any staff time working on this one.
It's just kind of brought up at the economic development. Is this the same thing that was kind of discussed there as doing?
So that was like a business appreciation.
Yeah.
Event.
Appreciation dinner.
This is separate from that, I think my understanding of this is more highlighting outstanding community members that are maybe doing good work in volunteering or solving a community issue or enhance and enlighten my
Sure, no,
statement.
I mean,
please.
my thoughts on this were, I think the best part of any council meeting is when we get to celebrate somebody, right? There's so much sad and, spending money and, trying to solve impossible problems. So my initial thoughts were that it'd be like quarterly where there's like a nomination process and maybe there's like 2 or 3 standing awards that are like the John Q. Smith, Service Award or the, Citizen of the Year or something, whatever it is, but revolving awards that happen every quarter that are available for nomination through, I don't know, like Sandy Source newsletter or, like an online thing where any citizen can nominate somebody that they think, deserves some recognition. Because I feel like if we do volunteers, it's the same people, which are incredible. But I think there's
a lot
other
of
people.
heroes out there.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
I think, to your point, there's a lot of volunteers in this community that aren't volunteers for the city of Sandy. So we don't know what they're doing, how they're doing it, the time they're spending doing it. We're just not, not in touch in that way with those organizations. So.
Is this something that the library or the Parks and Rec department could kind of do as an effort?
Potentially, yes. Yeah, I think, if we have good groundwork or good framework on what you want to see, I'll figure out where to place it, with staff and we can get something kicked off. I think I just needed a better understanding of scope, recurring nature of it, how quickly you want to implement something. We are coming up on the end of the year, so if we were going to do an award for like 2025 calendar year, implementing this in January is probably a good time to do so. Otherwise, we're looking a year out from actually making any improvement or advancement on this. So, yeah, I mean, I
I
think
start for like twice a year and then, see how that goes and see how it goes.
I like the idea of doing a library and opening it up to the district. Normally, I'm very Sandy first, not going outside, but if you're talking about volunteers and people who are giving up their own time, I don't think that knows a border.
Well, there's almost all the people that I know on the volunteer groups that I'm part of outside of city.
Right.
And that's
So we did it
But
under
they-
the library with their whole district.
Yeah.
I think
yeah, I mean, their newsletter as well reaches a very different demographic than the Sandy Source newsletter does. Ours is much more city focused, right? The library district the Sandy Library newsletter goes to a much wider audience, so I think we could advertise it there. And so I'm hearing like an outstanding citizen or citizen of the year award, any other sort of ideas that anyone has that we could sort of do some research on and hone in on developing.
What Lindy said.
Alternatively,
What I said.
if the council wants to say, Counselor Hanley, just work with Tyler, we can
I'd be
work
okay with that.
offline and
Yeah,
and
I'd be
figure
If
out
you're for
some
that, I'd be okay
parameters.
with that.
Thank you.
Since
There
you
you go.
kind
We
of
can
have an idea.
clear
it sounds
direction.
like.
I mean, is this something that everyone has, and people have appetite for, or is
Sure.
it seem?
If you wanted to try it and see where it goes.
My only concern is with quarterly, it might be a little too much.
I think so.
So
And I
to,
think eventually you're gonna get to this point where people don't put in and then it loses meaning.
sure,
Where if you do it on a more annual or biannual at the most, it'll still, you could accept things not, quarterly or something and then and kind of bring your forerunners or however you want to do it, but I think that's too much and then I think it'll burn out. That's my thoughts.
sounds great.
Okay, I'll
Alright.
work with you offline to move forward. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate, sorry we went over, but
We'll
thanks for the
get,
feedback.
can we have everybody back by 7:20 or 7:25? Let's do 7:25. Thank you.
That's what time it was.
I'd like to call the November 17th City Council meeting to order. Let's have the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Jeff, can you do roll call, please?
Yes, Counselor Mayton.
Present by video.
Thank you. Counselor Smallwood.
Here.
Counselor Sheldon.
Here.
Counselor Ramsayer.
Here.
Counselor Hanley.
Here.
Counselor Hokinson.
Here.
Mayor Walker.
Here. Okay, we've got a fairly packed agenda. We've got the consent agenda with just the meeting minutes, and then we've got, I believe, 3 ordinances and a resolution for the moratorium first, then the housing production strategy, then the adopting the economic development strategy, and finally, the House Bill 4064 administrative code modifications. Are there any changes to the agenda that anybody needs to suggest? No, okay, very good. Do we have any, anybody wanting to do public comment today?
We didn't have anyone on Zoom. Or no one registered in advance, I should say.
Okay. All right, and any response to previous comments?
We had one public comment at the last meeting from Mr. O'Leary. We interchanged and I think answered all his questions during the meeting.
Okay, very good. I have the draft meeting minutes from the November 3rd meeting on the consent agenda. May I get a motion, please, to pass those?
I'll make a motion, we accept the meeting minutes.
I'll second.
I have a motion from Council Sheldon, a second from Council Ramsayer to pass the consent agenda. All those in favor, vote aye. Aye. Opposed, vote nay. Chris put his thumbs
Yes, yeah.
up, yes, so, okay. Motion passes. New business, public hearing for 2025-39, extension of the existing moratorium. Hey, let me just do a check-in here. Are the ordinance, is the hearing steps the same for both things?
The steps are the same. You'll see that only on the first hearing did I include the instructions on
Okay.
testimony,
That's kind of what I
but the
was,
steps are the same.
okay.
Oh, well, except for you needing a first and second reading for the ordinances.
Right.
obviously.
Right, okay. So the opportunity to offer public testimony, well, nobody's here, so I'm not gonna really go to that. I will like to open the public hearing for resolution 2025-39 at 7:28. Are there any abstentions to declare here? Hearing none, are there any conflicts of interest to declare? None? May we have staff report, please?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Back before you again to talk about the city's moratorium one more time. The currently adopted moratorium expires on December 2nd of this year. And although the city continues to make great progress towards resolving the issues that gave rise to the moratorium, the city has not yet been able to achieve release of additional ERUs and or to complete the steps that will be required in order to get completely out from under the moratorium. And there's nothing at this time that staff is recommending change in terms of the language of the moratorium. And so our proposal is a straight 6-month extension of the existing moratorium to June 2nd, 2026. And that's what this resolution would accomplish.
I'm going to discuss the process for public testimony, and this will apply to Resolution 2025-39, Ordinance 2025-30, Ordinance 2025-31, and Ordinance 2025-32. So the process for public testimony is that each person providing testimony must provide their name and address for the record. If you do not wish to state your address publicly, you must provide it to the city recorder before you begin your testimony. This can be done by either in person or via email at recorder@ci.sandy.or.us. If you have documents that you wish to be considered by the council, they must be formally placed into the record of this hearing. To do that, either before or after you speak, email your materials to recorder@ci.sandy.or.us. Please try to avoid repetition. If someone else has already expressed the same thoughts, it's fine to simply state that you agree with the testimony of a previous speaker. To offer public testimony, for those joining us in person this evening, please raise your hand to indicate you would like to speak. If you are attending online, click the raise hand button and wait to be recognized. If you are attending via telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be recognized. I will call on each person when it is their turn to speak. Each speaker will receive up to 5 minutes to testify. The city recorder will let you know when you have 20 seconds remaining. So is there anyone here tonight who would like to testify? Jeff, is there anyone online or on the phone who would like to testify?
No, Mayor, I don't see any raised hands.
Okay. Josh, can you please give us a staff recap and recommendation?
Sure. So staff recommends adoption of this resolution to extend the moratorium to June 2nd, 2026. Do you want to clarify, of course, that if something changes between now and then, we don't necessarily have to wait until June 2nd to act on this again. If ERUs are freed up or something else happens at the policy level where a change to the moratorium makes sense, then we can certainly bring that back sooner. But this gives us until that date to take further action.
What's the effective, is it the day that it gets signed? The effective day of this?
Of this resolution?
Yeah.
So the resolution will be effective when it's signed, but it extends the existing timeframe by 6 months.
Right.
So it starts counting that 6 months on December 2nd.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Are there any questions or comments?
Close
That one?
public hearing first.
All right. Or do I ask for public comment?
Do we need to close the
Oh,
hearing?
I'm sorry, you're right.
I'll
Oh,
move to
may I have
close.
okay, may I have a motion to close the public hearing? Thank you, Don.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll
Second,
second.
I have a motion from Counselor Smallwood and a second from Counselor
Hokinson.
Hawkinson
It's all right.
to close the public hearing.
I can't remember.
All those in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote nay. Public hearing is closed. Are there any questions or comments?
No. I move for the first reading, resolution 20.
It's just a resolution. So
Oh,
you can just
Resolution, yeah.
move to approve.
I move to approve resolution 2025-39, extension of the existing moratorium on development.
I will second.
There you go, do
Sorry.
it. Nope, it's all you.
Okay, I have a motion to adopt resolution 2025-39 from Counselor Wilkinson and a second from Counselor Ramsayer to approve and adopt the resolution. All those in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote nay. And Chris was shown as voting this.
Thank you, Council.
The next on the agenda is the Public hearing for ordinance 2025-30, the Sandy Housing Production Strategy. I've already read the public hearing. Are there any abstentions to declare? I have to do that too for the.
We do need to do that for
Right.
each one. Yeah.
Are there any abstentions to declare? Any conflicts of interest to declare? Hearing none, may we hear the staff report, please? Welcome.
Do you want to do a little intro on this one or?
I'll just kick it over to you. I think this is pretty
Okay.
cut and dry, so go ahead.
Well,
Say
I-
the public hearing is open at 7:33 for the record.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll let Tim cover the majority of what's going to be discussed. He has a PowerPoint that I believe, Jeff, do you have that pulled up?
I
by
can
any
do it,
chance? Okay, thank you. I did want to mention that we did receive one public comment a minute before the deadline from the Home Builders Association of Greater Portland. First off, the email for that included a explanation that they didn't know how to submit comment. I'm not going to belabor this or anything, but I looked on our website today and we have plenty of explanation on both the planning division page on how to do that, on the public meetings page that Jeff oversees, and also on the HPS page itself. So I just want to dispel that statement. And then as far as the letter is concerned, I don't really have any recommendation around this. It's great that they wrote us a letter. I understand that their constituents are probably concerned about a potential construction excise tax. I think so is the city council. We've talked about that in the past, that before adopting a construction excise tax, we would need to have a work session and talk about what the percentage would be and what it would be placed on. So I think you have the same concerns that the Home Builders Association of Greater Portland has. I personally believe that convening a stakeholders group, I don't really know what that would result in, other than they would probably say, don't adopt a construction excise tax. So for me, I think it's kind of a silly exercise. And just to remind you all, unless we want to go under the owner rules, we have to adopt something before the end of December. So I think it's a little late in the game to be convening stakeholder groups and everything else that the Home Builders Association is recommending. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tim.
All right, great. Hello, council, one more time. I'm probably familiar to you, but if I'm not, my name is Tim Wood. I'm a project manager at FCS Group. And I've been able to work with the city on your housing production strategy. Brought a presentation today. This should look familiar to those of you who have been around for the meetings that I presented at before. So we'll just get through this, and if there's any questions, obviously don't hesitate to interrupt me. So let's get to the agenda. So what we're going to do today is look at the requested changes that we all discussed at the October 6th work session, which was a joint session with Planning Commission. DLCD feedback received as well. So Kelly went to the labor of going and getting comment from DLCD in advance to make sure that we could anticipate the comments that they'll have when they finally get to review our final version of this report. The Planning Commission public hearing feedback that we received there at our most recent meeting around this topic. And then I'll briefly give you a refresher on the background of the housing production strategy, a refresher on the strategies that we're proposing, and then we'll talk next steps. So let's go to those requested changes at the October 6th work session. So many of these came from you folks. So clarified the time, place, and manner accomplishments that we mentioned. That was a little vague, so we put a fine point on that in the document. Included some other recent accomplishments, including the transportation system plan and water master plan as recent accomplishments. Those are obviously crucial for housing construction. You need utilities to serve housing. Specified the consideration of triplexes and fourplexes in R2 and R3 zoning districts. I think many of you voiced support for that, and that was quite well received by DLCD as well. So it's great that there's some synergy there. Spelled out the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES, in the strategies. We refer to that quite often, especially in relation to the moratorium. So just wanted to make sure that those that aren't steeped in stormwater can understand what we're talking about. We consistently used homelessness and not houselessness. That's the preferred term from DLCD, so that's great. And provided further granularity regarding the recent building permit activities. So initially it was just single family detached and all others, and we provided some granularity where single family detached, attached, plexes, and multifamily. So helps the document read a little bit better. Moving on to the feedback that we received from DLCD on October 19th. These are the kind of the high points of what they recommended to us. A lot of the other stuff was sort of marginal. So we're just highlighting the most important parts for you here.
Can I just say one thing on that?
Of course.
So, and Tim did an excellent job of adding all the measures he's going to go over here as track changes in the document that you're reviewing tonight.
Mhm.
So the previous slide where he talked about the changes that were requested from Planning Commission and City Council, those were brought into the HPS report, but they're not track changed. These ones that he's going to go over now are all in track changes throughout the document.
So you have a sense for, what the difference is between the two documents that you've looked at. Thanks, Kelly. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Under the implementation steps section, we need to clarify what completion of these strategies means. Makes a lot of sense from DLCD's perspective. So we just want to make sure that we know what the city needs to do in order to check the box on these strategies. Identifying the types of projects the construction excise tax will fund. So the state wanted us to make sure that we were saying, hey, these funds are going to go to fund, housing units for those making X% of area median income. The zoning code amendments allowing more middle housing should be adopted a year earlier. So that one that we talked about where we're going to allow plexes in R2 and R3, they wanted that to be implemented a year earlier to kind of match up with the construction excise tax timeline. Adopting accessible design development code modifications. So they wanted us, because that's already a strategy in there, but we didn't explicitly call for the city to adopt those accessible design development code modifications. So we just took the step to make that explicit in the document. Outlining criteria to measure success for each strategy. So we had some broad measures of success for the whole document. What they wanted was a sense for what we could measure for each one of these different strategies. And for a lot of those, it's similar, right? So for instance, the first 5 where we're talking about, getting you out of the consent decree requirements, those steps look a lot similar, but obviously there's a difference between the impact that will be felt from a construction excise tax versus, supporting homeless service providers. And including a discussion of existing and expected barriers to the development of needed housing. And this was a great opportunity for us to sort of pound the table and say, the expected and existing barrier to the construction of needed housing is the consent decree. So it gave us another opportunity to just sort of state the case to anyone who's reading the document. Finally, the next slide includes just a handful of comments that we got at the Planning Commission public hearing where they reviewed this document on the 27th. The commission recommended that the city council approve the ordinance and adopt the HPS, including the modifications that are recommended by DLCD. So basically accepting all those track changes in the document. The HPS project team has since incorporated the DLCD feedback as track changes to the HPS report, as Kelly mentioned. So not a whole lot of fireworks there at the Planning Commission level, which was great. Moving on to a quick review of background as to what this is. So obviously you guys have been working on housing for quite a while. You adopted your housing capacity analysis back in 2024. That calls for the city to construct about 2,400 new dwelling units over that 20-year timeframe. Obviously, we're limited by the consent decree. So part of this document will help to advocate for, ways to help alleviate and end the consent decree ideally. So the housing production strategy itself, sort of a new document that the state requires cities to adopt, essentially just committing the city to various strategies to help the production of needed housing in the city. The structure of the report is typically introduction, discussions of housing policies, strategies to meet future needs, discussion of how strategies affect fair and equitable housing, and then a couple of appendices, including the contextualized housing needs analysis, which basically just goes over various demographics and how that relates to housing affordability and access in the city. And then finally, the pre-HPS survey, that was another piece that that DLCD recommended that we include. So let's talk strategies. Those first 5 that we're looking at under the regulations and adequate public facilities component, these are all sort of aimed at the consent decree. So pursuing accommodations from the state to make science-based improvements to the NPDES permit, adopting the wastewater system facility plan amendment where we identify what the preferred alternative of the city is to ultimately end the consent decree, pursuing non-local funding match for stormwater systems. So basically, how can we pay down this massive capital expenditure that the city needs to do so we don't affect ratepayers? Construct necessary wastewater conveyance. So that's basically the capital project that will end the consent decree. And then finally, sort of an interim step of improving the wastewater treatment plant and related system infrastructure. There's some wiggle room there where we can open up a handful more units of development in the shorter term. So basically calling on all of those things to be implemented in the first 5 strategies. The next one is the affordable housing construction excise tax. So essentially this is like a school excise tax. It's, basically a percentage of a building's permit value. So if a house, is adding $350,000 worth of permit value, with a percentage of that that's paid at the time of development. And those funds are pretty prescriptive in the way that the city is allowed to use them, but it's mostly just for, various affordable housing projects. So it could look like SDC buy downs for, deed restricted affordable housing provided by a nonprofit, or the city could purchase land with the proceeds of the construction excise tax. You'll probably heard me say this a number of times, but it takes time for this account to build funds. So it's going to be a while before you're able to do much with it. But over the course of several years, you're going to be able to build up enough funds to actually move the needle on a couple projects in the future. And I say it all the time, but look at Bend and the example that they've had the construction excise tax there for affordable housing for a long time. And it's really moved the needle there. They've built hundreds of units that are affordable to folks that wouldn't otherwise be able to afford to live there. So it's a really great tool. I'll give a little granularity here. There's you're allowed to choose the percentage for residential and also non-residential. So you can choose to charge one or the other or both, and whatever rate. There are some statutory limitations on how high you can make it, but I doubt you're going to be pushing that. The graph you see here on the slide, that represents the restrictions that are put on residential construction excise tax. So that basically the city hangs on to the vast majority of that money and is allowed to use it on affordable housing projects. The non-residential component is a lot more loose. You don't give any more to the state, and you're able to do kind of a little bit more flexible spending. But both are great opportunities for city to build up and be able to move the needle on projects in the future. Your zoning code changes. We have 4 here. So amending the zoning code to allow middle housing options, and that's that one that we talked about where we're going to allow plexes in R2 and R3, providing pre-approved plans that meet accessibility goals. State really enjoyed that one, so that's a great one to have, and it's a win-win, I think. Monitor and require registration for short-term rentals. So basically just recognizing that there's certain things that the city can do to regulate those and make sure that those units, to the extent possible, stay on the rental side rather than the short-term rental side. And support preservation of manufactured homes and mobile parks. It's the last great bastion of market rate affordable housing in any community. So, I think it's definitely a laudable goal to try and preserve those opportunities to keep folks housed. And finally, we're talking partnerships. So F1 is utilize surplus public land for future housing development. So that's city land, county land, federal land, basically developing partnerships with different agencies to try and identify opportunities where there's land that's held by a public entity that's no longer needed that we could construct housing on. And finally, expanding partnerships with local service providers and continuing to fund the community service officer position. So pretty straightforward there. Just want to make sure that we're keeping in close contact with our friends in the nonprofit space and making sure that the city continues to fund that community services officer position, because that's a great liaison between the existing homeless population in the city. And next steps. So ideally, we adopt the HPS before the end of the year. And then finally, DLCD will review the final report and provide feedback. So we're pretty close to the end on this one.
One thing I will say is that when we got the DLCD feedback, which is preliminary in nature, obviously, I was pleasantly surprised not only that they gave us all the feedback that they did, but it did appear that they went through the entire document. We didn't share that with you. I'd be more than happy to send it to anybody that wants it, but it was basically the entire 80-some pages with little notes in there. So it was kind of a hard thing to decipher through. That's why Tim put together a memo for you to look at instead. But it looked like they went through the entirety of the document to me.
Yeah.
And made comments wherever they felt necessary. The great thing around it was that they didn't make any comments about any of our strategies being ones that shouldn't be included or that we needed more strategies. So to me, that was positive. So hopefully that carries through with their actual formal review that happens in the next few months.
Yeah, they were providing comments on the appendices. That's how you know somebody really read it all the way through.
Yeah.
So that's it. With any questions, I'm happy to answer or take my best shot at least.
I'm gonna do public comments first and then we're gonna.
Great, let's do that.
Okay. Since there's nobody here tonight, Jeff, is there anyone here tonight, online?
We have
or-
two there. Yeah.
We do?
Yeah. Are you opening are we
Yeah, I
ready to
opened up the
receive this
public
one?
hearing for, yeah.
Okay. So just if you're on Zoom, if you could just click that raise hand button if you'd like to testify. But Mayor, no, I don't see any raised hands.
Can I have a staff recap and a recommendation, please?
Close the hearing.
What?
Close the hearing,
Um,
the public hearing.
I do that next.
Yeah, we do the recap first.
Recap first.
My apologies.
Sorry. I get it wrong half the time. So. Even though I have an agenda right in front of me.
Yeah, the staff recap would be the planning commission and city council recommended adoption of the ordinance before you tonight with the draft HPS.
Okay, all right. May I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilor Ramsayer and a second from Councilor Henry to close the public hearing on resolution 2025-39. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Chris votes aye. Anybody opposed, vote nay. Motion passes. Public hearing is closed at 7:51. Call for council discussion. Are there any questions or comments?
Are we at the point now where when we submit this, the DCLD,
DLCD.
there, I don't know. There are no appeals, is that correct? Is that the discussion we had? So once this is looked at and redone and submitted, this is the document. There won't be a chance to go back unless they grossly go back on whoever looked at it the first time and missed a bunch of things, and then we'll have to resubmit. Is that correct?
So
I remember council, I'm sorry to call, but I remember you had a really good answer to this question.
we'll let our attorney handle that one.
DLCD has provided comments, which is unusual in advance of the city approving it. And they did that, as I understand, with the explicit caveat that this does not prevent them from having different comments once the city approves it and submits it. However, it would be surprising to me if they did.
And upsetting to me.
So, the statutory system is that once this is approved by the city, it is submitted to DLCD. DLCD then does a comment, like an open comment period and their own review, and then we'll either have new comments or not. And the statute says that there is no further appeal of that decision. I believe I said last time, I'm skeptical that there can really be no further mechanism to challenge that decision, but that's what the statute says.
Who makes the changes? If they had comments, does that mean we would have to make those changes?
Right, if
Or
if
they
they have
make those
comments, and those will be
changes.
submitted, it will go back to the city to then revise and respond to those comments.
So Tim and I would be before you all again
A
with
question-
the mandatory changes.
Go ahead.
I just have a quick housekeeping for Tyler or Jeff. On page 23 online, under listed attachments exhibits, it's listed as DCLV edits memo.
Oh, you're right, Counselor. Apologies for that.
No, that's, fine. I just was thinking it's late and it's.
We don't know the acronym
And
either,
I
apparently.
either have too
So
much coffee or not enough coffee.
I had a couple questions.
That was me.
So my first question is that if I suggested a word change, from would to could, would that trigger another
Maybe.
review period? I'll let you
probably
make a
depends on what section it
Okay,
is.
so I'm looking at page 27, of the housing production strategy. And this is the one where we're saying that we're gonna work on our permit, our NPDES permit, pursue accommodation from the state of Oregon to ensure additional housing development, blah, 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 blah. So then you go down to the revenue impacts, and it's like you're very hopeful. The current development moratorium would be significantly modified or repealed under revenue impacts. That's on page 27.
That's if this strategy came to pass, right?
Right, but I mean, the strategy is to, work with DEQ on our NDE, pursue accommodations. But to predict that that's going to
Yeah,
significantly modify or repeal it is, your mouth's to God's ears, but I don't know, it's a little hopeful, wishful thinking, so.
and I think it was, and I'm not saying this was right or wrong, but I think it was kept broad like that in the off chance that like the 3-basin rule is modified or something that we're not foreseeing likely to happen, but could potentially happen in a.
Okay.
That's
Well,
exactly right.
I was gonna say change, would to could, because it could significantly, but I
think this was one of your edits possibly, Tyler?
Yeah, so, keep in mind, this is a
Yep.
multi-month,
Yeah.
year-long
I don't
process,
wanna-
right? So some of these.
I'm not married to that comment, I'm
Well,
just.
just for background, though, this was, the early stages of the 3-basin rule subcommittee that I was a part of, that was evaluating the likelihood of modifying the 3-basin rule. And so we were very hopeful, maybe stupidly so, but we had, hope that, hey, if we could get this thing modified, it would resolve the moratorium issue. So that's where that language came from. I think that's a pretty minor change as far as
I'm happy to
would
make
to
it.
could.
I'm happy to make it.
If there's
It's up
interest
to
in
you all, I'm not gonna,
modifying
like I
it.
said, I'm not dying on that hill.
I do think that leaving it as would gives us maybe a little more, not teeth, but I think the statement is still true that if the 3-basin rule is modified to the level that we need it to be modified to, it would be significant to, modify or repeal. the
But
consent
what
decree.
about the dilution?
It sounds more promising.
Yeah.
We're trying to demonstrate the impact
Yes.
that would have on housing.
And so it's stronger. I mean, I get what you're trying to, what you're trying to do. I totally understand, but I think when you read it like that, to me, it sounds more impactful.
The dilution ratio is another caveat, that perhaps we missed including here as another component of the strategy.
Well, anyway, I don't wanna, kick a dead horse. The one thing that I'll go to page 49, I think, on the partnering with local service providers,
I'm sorry, what page was that, Mayor?
49, I think. It's the strategy L. And it says, partner with the Clackamas County Housing and Homeless Task Force to find ways to secure a clear path to shelter and reduce wait times for those experiencing homelessness, which sounds very general. Then under the estimated magnitude of impact, it's got quite a bit of stuff in there. And I'm just trying to understand, like, Potential increase in shelter and transitional housing types. Is that in Sandy or in Clackamas County?
I think Clackamas County,
Okay,
and we left it broad, kind of on purpose.
because we're partnering with Clackamas County, blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Correct.
So all those next four lines are probably, all four of those lines are more, okay. That's fine. All right, if that's the case.
Yeah, we're certainly not advocating for
Right,
creating a whole new
right.
Housing structure type that we don't have locally. We don't have the funding for that or the staffing for that, so.
Those are the only questions I had. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Chris, do you have anything?
None from me.
Okay, thank
I had
you.
one question
Go ahead.
related. There was a comment in there. You mentioned, you responded to the one comment that came in tonight, but there was also a comment in there. That came in October. Did we already talk about that one?
Oh, the one from the Fair Housing Council of Oregon.
Yeah, can you address that one as well?
Yeah, so that one was interesting because it was kind of arguing the opposite thing that the HBA one was arguing. They were arguing that we didn't go far enough in our strategies and we needed to do a lot more work to accomplish the requirements in the ORS. Tim and I discussed that at great length, and we believe based on the feedback we received from DLCD and the changes that we made, it addresses almost all of the Fair Housing Council of Oregon's concerns. The only one I would say it doesn't address is this recommended analysis thing that they brought up for the city of Hillsborough. That is a much larger city than Sandy, so I think comparing our HPS to theirs is a little bit unfair. And we don't have the budget that Hillsborough does to do some sort of spatial analysis like that, so.
So the short answer is we feel like we've addressed it other than for the Hillsborough, which wouldn't apply.
Personally, I don't think it applies. That's a different scenario.
Thank you.
I mean, Tim, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, yeah, I think from a budget and population standpoint, I mean, we're talking about apples and oranges, right? So.
We're like,
I just wanted to make sure we
Yeah,
acknowledged it.
zucchini, so.
yeah, we're like, I don't know the exact, but we're like 1/8 or 1/10, somewhere in there of the population of Hillsborough, so.
We have like, what, 23 here?
No, only 13.
Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, they're 100+ thousand,
Yeah.
so I mean,
So I
it's
think
it's a very different city.
Any other questions?
Yeah, and with Intel.
Okay,
I mean,
may I
we
have a
Intel
motion to
on it.
adopt resolution 2025-39?
Reading?
Actually, Mayor, would you like the first reading?
Oh, yes, may I have a first reading?
Yeah, Mayor, this is ordinance 2025-30. An ordinance adopting the 2025 Sandy Housing Production Strategy related to Oregon House Bill 2003.
I move that we accept the first reading.
Second.
I have a motion from Counselor Openson and a second from Counselor Smallwood to adopt the ordinance 2025-30.
To accept the first reading.
The first. I'm reading the wrong thing. I'm sorry. We have a motion, okay, I have a motion to approve the first reading from Counselor Oakenson and a second from Counselor Smallwood. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Chris is an aye. Opposed, vote nay. Motion passed unanimously. So since the first vote was unanimous, Jeff, may I get a second reading of the ordinance, please?
Yes, Mayor, ordinance 2025-30, an ordinance adopting the 2025 Sandy Housing Production Strategy related to Oregon House Bill 2003.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to approve the second reading?
I'll make a motion, we approve the second reading.
Second?
I'll second.
I have a motion to approve from Counselor Sheldon and a second from Counselor Ramsayer to approve the second reading. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote nay. Chris voted aye. Motion passes to approve the second reading of ordinance 2025-30. And we did close the public hearing, right?
Yes, we did. Thank you, council.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Thank you for all of your help, guys.
It's
Been-
it cleans it up.
And we like you, but we hope not to see you on this subject.
You and me both, Kelly. Thank you all. It's been really fun to be able to work with you guys. So
Thank you so much.
it's a great city
That was
council.
very helpful, Tim.
Thank you all.
Grab some pizza if there's any.
I won't say no.
I think those kids. may
Back in that room back
be- Clean this out.
They didn't like the Greek one.
Okay, next public hearing we have is ordinance 2025-31 to adopt the development strategic plan as an addendum to the Envision Sandy 2050 comprehensive plan. So the public hearing notice that I did at the beginning of the meeting still comes into play. Let's open the public hearing for ordinance 2025-31 at 8:03. Are there any abstentions to declare? Hearing none, are there any conflicts of interest to declare? Hearing none, please, may we please have the staff report?
Thank you, Mayor. So just to remind everybody, the Economic Development Strategic Plan was a council goal this biennium to adopt it by ordinance, and I'll go into that more in a few slides, but I just wanted to kind of lead with that. The Economic Development Strategic Plan was developed by previous staff and a consultant in the aspiration of growing Sandy's economy in the coming years. The Economic Development Advisory Board unanimously recommended the adoption of the plan to the City Council on April 5th, 2023. So about 2.5 years ago that occurred. Sorry, Jeff, can you go to the second slide? So this slide kind of shows a timeline of the different EDAB meetings and the different City Council meetings that occurred along the way. They also got information and kind of input from community members at Future Fest, I believe in 2022. Couple of my bullet points there don't have years. So it started in May 2022 and kind of ended about a year after that. And then with that recommendation from the Economic Development Advisory Board, it came to the City Council on June 5th, 2023. So not quite 2.5 years ago, but quite some time ago. The council at that time passed the Economic Development Strategic Plan by motion, not by ordinance. And I'll go into that more in a few minutes here. So we're back before you tonight just to adopt that same plan that was adopted by motion through an actual ordinance reading. Yeah, so because no formal resolution or ordinance was adopted, we met with the city attorney. I think it was Josh that advised us on this, that it would be, not required, but a stronger foundation for supporting various actions by adopting it as an addendum to our comprehensive plan. So we're hoping that by adoption of the ordinance tonight, it will give clear economic development directions since it will be codified as part of the comp plan. We're hoping that the Economic Development Strategic Plan will assist in distribution of the conditional 190 ERUs. That's all I'll say on that for now. And then the final bullet point is, and this was, I think, an emphasis from the Economic Development Advisory Board, from what I understand, from our previous economic development manager, was that they were hopeful that the employment projects that were prioritized within the plan would be prioritized by the city in any way possible. And it wasn't like a clear direction of how that would be, but that was kind of the hope of the plan. I do think that would be partially accomplished by using it with the DAP program for the distribution of the 190 ERUs. So I do think part of their goal or part of their desire would be fulfilled as part of that process. Just to remind you, this is goal 6.2 in your biannual city council goals that you formed, I believe, in February of this year. So that goal said to review and formally adopt the Economic Development Strategic Plan as a comprehensive background document. So with adoption of the ordinance tonight, that's exactly what it would do. And it would join these other, maybe 10 planning documents that we've adopted over the last 23 years, with the majority of them in the last 10 years as addendums to the city comprehensive plan. And then in conclusion, the staff is just asking for you to review all the facts tonight, hold a legislative hearing and vote. The city council doesn't have to do that. They could tell staff to go back to the drawing board or to rehire a consultant, but currently we don't have a consultant on. This was all done, like I said, 2.5 years ago or so. We do believe that the document's still relevant, and at this point, because of the lack of economic development that's happened over the last few years, I don't think there's anything to really update in the plan at this point. So I would say if the council chose to, they could go back through that exercise of updating the plan. That's not staff's recommendation. And the planning commission, when they had a legislative hearing about this in October, they did not think, they thought the document probably was still satisfactory as well, so they did not recommend any modifications to it. So the recommendation is to move for the first reading of ordinance 2025-31. Thank you, Mayor.
Jeff, is there anyone online or on the phone who would like to testify?
Mayor, no, I don't see any raised hands.
Okay, can the staff please give us a recap of the recommendation?
Certainly, we would recommend that the planning commission and staff would recommend that the city council adopt ordinance 2025-31, adopting the economic development strategic plan as an addendum to the Vision Sandy 2050 comprehensive plan.
Very good, thank you. May I call for a motion to close the public hearing for ordinance 2025-31?
Make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Second,
I'll second.
a motion from Councilor Sheldon and a second from Councilor Wilkinson to close the public hearing for ordinance 2025-31. All those in favor vote aye. Chris votes aye. All those opposed vote nay. Public hearing is closed at 8:09. Are there any questions or comments? I will just make one comment. I did ask, I think a week ago or so. So remember when we had not the ignite, I couldn't remember the verb we decided on.
I can remember.
Whatever it is, that plan,
I think it's engage.
engage, something like that. Okay, whatever that is that we've changed it to is, I was just kind of curious about how that whole plan, policy program plays into this economic, strategic plan. And so I was told that that's kind of more, a strategic plan, and it's really, it's kind of how we're going to implement this plan. So it's not really part of this.
Kind of sits underneath, I think.
So that was just something that was helpful for me to understand that.
Could I just say one little thing on that? I think if the council so chose, or the urban renewal district, or if you got a bunch of competing projects, I think you could certainly use this plan as a foundation of eliminating a few of them that weren't on the priority list.
Yeah,
It's just a thought.
good point. Okay, any other comments or questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2025-31.
Should probably have to read it.
Oh, yeah, sorry. See, we're all a mess.
We're doing
Jeff,
great.
would you
We're
please
doing
read
It's
the-
all of us.
Yes, Mayor. This is ordinance 2025-31, an ordinance adopting the 2023 Economic Development Strategic Plan as an addendum to the Envision Sandy 2050 Comprehensive Plan.
May I have a motion to approve the first reading?
Motion stands.
I'll second.
I have a motion from Councilor Smallwood to, and a second from Councilor Wilkinson to approve the first reading of ordinance 2025-31. All those in favor vote aye. Chris voted aye. Aye. Any opposed, vote nay. Motion passed unanimously. Jeff, may I have a second reading, please?
Yes, Mayor. Ordinance 2025-31, an ordinance adopting the 2023 Economic Development Strategic Plan as an addendum to the Envision Sandy 2050 Comprehensive Plan.
And motion to approve the second reading.
Make a motion, we approve the second reading.
Second,
I'll second.
I have a motion from Councilor Sheldon and a second from Councilor Hanley to approve the second reading of ordinance 2025-31. All those in favor vote aye. Chris votes aye. All those opposed vote nay. Motion passes unanimously. The motion is passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, council.
Housekeeping.
Okay. That's okay. Last, thank you, Kelly. Are you for your
Yeah.
last one? Same song, third verse. Public hearing ordinance 2025-32 is for the House Bill 4064 administrative code modifications. I'd like to open up the public hearing based on the instructions I gave at the beginning of the meeting for ordinance 2025-32 at 8:20. Are there any abstentions to declare? Hearing none. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare? Hearing none. May we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Mayor. So This one's an interesting one. There's a reason it came last on the agenda, I believe. But I want to preface that with, I believe it is just a housekeeping item, similar to the last one in a lot of ways. So I think there was a lot of confusion because when we brought it to planning commission, we labeled it as a mass timber administrative code update. It's really not that at all. I'll just be very honest. So what happened is in 2023, we were encouraged by the state of Oregon to apply for a code up grant. They actually wanted a medium-sized city close to the national forest to kind of be one of the communities in the exterior Portland metro area. So that's, I think, for one of the main reasons we got awarded the grant. What happened is DLCD hired, I think it was 3J or another similar group. It might have been MIG actually, to go through our code and recommend code edits that could help with the construction of mass timber. What happened during that process, though, is they discovered that our code really didn't need that many modifications to allow mass timber. So what they instead did is they looked through the code, I believe, and found some areas where our code was not compliant with House Bill 4064. And that's the bill that required that we treat manufactured and prefab homes the exact same as stick-built traditional homes. So what you got out of that was the majority of the code edits that they brought forward to you earlier this year in that work session, I believe on, sorry, I was trying to find when that was. Oh, it was in February 18th, which I linked in the packet. The majority of what they had was actually just small changes that addressed that House bill. I think to supplement their work and to actually show more work to be produced as they were doing in all the communities, they also identified two other areas that we could potentially modify the code to allow more mass timber housing, and those were cottage clusters and ADUs. The city council and the planning commission were very clear at that February work session that if you were ever going to consider cottage clusters or increased sized ADUs around town, that would be done separately as part of the HPS. And then when we went through the HPS process, we decided we didn't want to address cottage clusters at this time. So that's kind of fallen out. So the code edits before you have nothing to do with cottage clusters. That's the first thing.
Nice.
The code edits before you tonight also have nothing to do with increasing the size of ADUs. If you as a council ever decide you want to do that, let me know or let Tyler know, and we will bring some code edits back to you. But in the meantime, I'm not proposing that whatsoever. So the code edits before you tonight, all they're really doing is addressing House Bill 4064 and making sure that our code is in compliance with the modular and prefabbed housing requirements. So my apologies for labeling it mass timber. That was my fault. I know that it confused some people. I think part of the confusion was that when we got the grant, that's what everything was called. But just ignore the term mass timber for the rest of the meeting if you can. And also just ignore anything around cottage clusters or ADUs because we're not really talking about any of that tonight. So the text amendments, which I just said, are the one on the left is all we're doing tonight is alignment with HB 4064. Most of the alignment issues that were in our code were actually caught by MIG and Josh during the clear and objective audit. However, there was a few that we didn't catch during that process, and that's what tonight is going to clear up actually is kind of a miss on the clear and objective audit, in all honesty. The one on the category on the right, that would be cottage clusters and ADUs, which we're not going to discuss. Next slide, please. So as I said, local governments have to allow manufactured homes and prefabbed homes wherever single family dwellings are allowed, and that's like your traditional stick-built homes. We are not allowed anymore to apply design or siting standards to manufactured or prefabbed homes that are more restrictive than standards that apply to single unit dwellings. So the design standards could be the same as our traditional single family, but they can't be anything more. Must allow prefabbed dwellings in manufactured dwelling parks. It's kind of, we have not seen that yet in Sandy since 2022 when this was adopted. And we believe the city will fully comply with that House bill from 2022 with the proposed minor amendments before you tonight. Next slide, please. So one of the biennial goals was ensure compliance with state legislation and regulatory mandates or code amendments that are responsible and reflect the community's values. I believe based on the February meeting, staff was directed that to move forward with the administrative amendments before you tonight, but that you basically didn't believe that cottage clusters and increased ADUs reflected the community's values at this time. So I do believe we're meeting the kind of the bounds of that goal. And yeah, they actually just kind of ignore the rest of that slide, sorry. Next slide, please. So by adopting these code amendments for manufactured homes, prefab dwellings, and manufactured dwelling parks, will have state consistency issue, or will be consistent with state statute. The planning commission did review this. There was some confusion, and that's why I'm trying to make up for it at this meeting. And so hold the public hearing is our recommendation, discuss the proposed modifications, and hopefully vote on an ordinance tonight. I did get an inquiry from the mayor earlier today, and she actually had a couple fantastic points that I don't want to forget. So I'll let Mayor Walker address those later. And we can go through those after we hear the public comment, I guess. Okay. So that concludes my staff report.
Thank you, Kevin. Jeff, is there anyone online or on the phone who would like to testify?
No, Mayor, I don't see any raised hands.
Okay, Kelly, may we get a recap and recommendation, please?
Yeah, I would hope that we can talk about any amendments that you'd like to see these code amendments, and then either adopt them tonight with any changes, or at least potentially adopt the first reading and come back with those edits at a future meeting for you to consider.
May I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second.
A motion to close the public hearing from Council Ramsayer and a second from Council Sheldon. All those in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Chris voted aye. All those opposed, vote nay. Public hearing is closed at 8:20. Any comments or questions? First one is a little bit of a housekeeping one for me. And I'm looking at those code changes. Let's see, I don't know. Can you stick that up there, the code changes?
17.30.
Sure, just one moment.
It starts on
It's-
page
it's the track
228.
changes?
Yeah, the
Is it
package.
228? Okay.
Yeah, it's Exhibit A 228.
All right, and so, one thing that I was confused about was that under section 17.90.10 applicability section, number D, that actually should read, should say, single detached dwellings, duplexes, accessory dwelling units and manufactured dwellings and prefabricated dwellings within manufactured dwelling parks are exempt from all requirements of this chapter except for add section 17.90.40 and then leave the 17.90.140 and section 17.90.150. So I'm adding just the line sections 17.90.40 in there as a modification, as a proposed modification for a motion.
And the mayor brought this up to me earlier today, and
Yeah.
it's 100% a miss on staff's part, so that's a great catch.
Okay, and because then I was reading the 40 below there and it was like, oh, this, it was like contradicting itself. That's why I caught it. But the other thing that I'd asked earlier in the week was just, I kind of wanted to make sure that if we were doing these manufactured homes and prefabricated dwellings, that they had the same, and that they're basically allowed now any single family resident, any zone, a single family residential zone and all that, is that I just wanted to make sure that they had the same requirements for design elements. And so if you could scroll down there, I guess it's probably the next page after that. There's some required elements, just for some of you that aren't aware of this, but the way we tried to kind of make sure that we weren't just getting like T111 siding and 4x4 posts on the front porch was doing these design elements. And we didn't want to say exactly what it was, but it was more like you have to have 5 of these elements or 6, based on different rules. And basically the criteria is that when there is no garage, which I didn't really catch at first. Rear loaded garage or no garage, they have to have 4 elements. And I don't know if these manufactured homes are gonna have a garage or not. But the proposed code says that under, and I'm looking at table 17.90.150-A, number of required design elements, number 3. It says manufactured homes, prefabricated dwellings shall provide a minimum of 4 design elements regardless of the garage width percent. So basically, we require 5 or 6 elements for houses that have, certain, a garage when it's up to, if the garage, what is it, street facing attached garage, if the garage width is 50% of the house, we require 5 elements. If it's 50% to 60%, 6 elements, and if it's over 60 to 70, it's 7 elements. So my recommended modification or preference would be to just go ahead and make the design element required the same as the single family residential homes, detached homes, because we're allowed to do that. We can't make it stricter, but we can make it the same. And we're actually making it weaker. Let's just say that, and the reason I say that, my rationale for that is that, manufactured homes, they don't necessarily have their, they can kind of have those flat roofs and look pretty basic. So I'm just thinking that, putting by a minimum of 5, 5, 6, or 7 elements. But again, it can, if there's no garage, it can still have the 4. So I'd just like to make it the same as the SFR there on that table. Does it have, what
Is there,
thoughts on that?
is there a significant impact to a typical available manufactured home to
Where they
comply
don't
with
have
that?
those capabilities.
I don't know what the 4 are well enough to know if that's feasible. I mean, you're not gonna change the pitch of a road.
No, right.
'Cause
And we
the
don't have a,
overpasses kind of limit that.
I noticed that on the multifamily density, Kelly, we do have a 312 pitch or something like that. We do have a minimum roof pitch on
In multifamily,
multifamily,
we do in multifamily.
but not on single family.
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, I guess to Don's point, what I'm wondering is, a person goes and orders a manufactured home or purchases a manufactured home. Do any of these design elements, like, is it something that they wouldn't be able to get?
It's an interesting question and I don't know if I know the exact answer to it. I'll just be honest. I do know we had one on. There was a Learn to Burn, which you're familiar with, on Sandy Heights Street, I think right by Geraldine Court. You were there. I was there too. Right across from, I think, Seaman Avenue right there. So they put a manufactured home, complying with state statute. They didn't put a garage though. So to the mayor's point, it was really easy to put the 4. I think they did like a covered front porch, wider decorative trim, maybe like a second siding material and something else. So it was really easy for them to accomplish.
Okay.
If it went up to 7, would it be more difficult? Probably, but I think they would probably still be able to do it. And our code doesn't require a garage. So if it's an affordability issue, my personal argument would be, if you don't put the garage, it will save you a lot of money, plus you only have to put 4 design elements. If you want to put a garage, it's going to increase your project cost significantly. And I don't think putting another 1 to 3 elements.
I think most manufactured homes have a garage. I don't think that's an option.
It would be a separate garage,
In
yeah.
which case, it's a separate permit or would be viewed separately, would it not?
Potentially, unless it gets installed like,
It wouldn't be attached.
it could be, but that would be very unusual.
So then does it
You are
make it-
correct.
Does it make it moot then?
Well, it says if it's a detached garage for a house, then they have to have 4 elements for the house and 4 elements on the garage.
That's
Yeah, so I would
100%
think
correct.
I think the garage would have to have its own features.
Yes, the only time that wouldn't be the case is if it was attached to the manufactured home. I do agree with you, though. I've never seen it.
Yeah.
I'm sure it could happen, but I think it would be few and far between.
I'm okay with it.
I mean, just for some context, the design elements, there's a wide range, right? From dormers to porch railings, roof overhangs, stone bases, bay windows, shakes, shingles, brick, or
No more shakes.
other or other items meeting the intent of this section if approved through a design deviation. So we don't have an exhaustive list, but also like, hey, you've got four, you need one more, propose
I think
something.
the key is as
and-
long as you can do it and we're not.
Yeah. It's fine, it's not-
Because my great aunt lives in a manufactured home with an attached garage, but not in Oregon, so maybe that's not a thing.
I mean, I think I've seen a few. I've just never seen one
It's
instant.
whether you bought it and it was shipped that way
Yeah.
or whether somebody added on. I mean, my in-laws had some very creative stuff they did with manufactured homes years ago and none of it would have passed any code anywhere.
I can say we have seen some carports attached to manufactured homes. So I think that's an option at least some manufactured home dealers.
And is that figured into this at all with the elements? I mean, what is a carport considered? Is it a temporary extension of the home?
I think by definition, it would be the same as a garage. So they
It would be
say
the
if they
same as a
put,
garage.
say if they put a carport, it would probably trigger one or two more
Okay, I
design
just
elements.
wondered what the definition of a garage was, because a carport is a covered,
Right.
supported
Yeah, because I mean,
structure, usually attached to. I was just kind of curious as to what the consensus was, the difference was if that was considered a garage or the definition of a garage.
so I think just about all the manufactured homes on Strawbridge have carports.
Yeah,
The reason I brought this up is that, this
Not
also
garages, yeah.
allows people to bring in like used manufactured homes on a lot that they could find and put it in. So I was a little bit concerned about, what it looked like for the rest of the neighborhood. Is there any concern about adding, making the manufactured home prefab dwellings the same as the other rest of it? Anybody have an objection to that?
So I think if you're all good with that, I think unless Josh has another feeling about it, I think what I would do is probably change E3 to just say manufactured homes and prefab dwellings shall provide the same design elements.
It's design elements as described in table 17.
Exactly.
150-A.
Good catch.
Can you repeat that, please, Josh?
Shall provide design elements as described in table 17.90.150-A.
Thank you.
As soon as you get that, I have another one for you. Sorry. I have another cleanup item
Okay.
in here. Is it, when you're ready? We'll finish.
I'm
getting it
ready.
down.
I'm ready.
You're still writing.
Yeah, but I have it in my head.
I can't multitask.
He's a professional.
You can't watch him write and talk.
I probably can't.
I'm ready, Don.
Okay, manufactured home, manufactured dwelling. Mostly the manufactured home has been struck out except in the definition and that section you were just modifying.
Good catch. Yeah, so it should be,
So under 171030, it would be manufactured dwelling. as the
Correct.
Title, right?
yep, you're correct.
And then that section you were just in, I think is the other place that it shows up.
Yeah, it's leads with manufactured homes. It should be dwellings.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
Great catch.
So 3 modifications to the motion, to the resolution ordinance, excuse me. The adding that one code reference. Adopting these elements on number 3 to say it's the same as in table above. And the consistency of calling them manufactured dwellings and prefabricated dwellings. It's just manufactured dwellings in all parts.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, I did have another clarification, I'm sorry. The prefab part, is that just covered somewhere else, not something that's being changed as part of this cleanup? Because we do reference prefab, but it wasn't a defined term that you called out. But we used it later.
Yeah, I think it's referenced in state statute. So I think that's what we're relying upon is the House Bill 4064 state statute of what a prefab dwelling is.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Any
I just
other
wanted to
changes?
clarify,
Uh-huh.
based on the earlier question, that garage is in fact defined to include a carport.
It's just gonna
Say that
say the
again?
same thing.
Garage is defined to include a carport,
Okay,
so a
thank you.
carport is a garage.
It's specifically,
Okay.
accessory building, shelter, or carport used for parking or temporary storage of vehicles, etc. So.
Okay, all right. Jeff, can we get a first reading of the ordinance as amended, please? If you feel so bold.
Yeah, Yeah, yes, absolutely, Mayor. This is ordinance 2025-32. An ordinance amending the Sandy Development Code by revising sections 17.10.30, 17.12.10, 17.34.10, 17.36.10, 17.38.10, 17.40.10, 17.74.70, 17.84.10, and 17.90.40 of Title 17 of the Sandy Municipal Code.
That little song.
I was kind of dancing over here too. That was great.
As amended with the.
As amended.
Changes with Kelly, okay? May I have a motion to approve the first reading?
I'll move to approve the first reading.
Second?
Second.
I have a motion by Counselor Hokinson and a second by Counselor Sheldon to approve the first reading of ordinance 2025-32. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Chris votes yes. All opposed, vote nay. Motion passes unanimously. Jeff, may we get a second reading, please?
Yes, Mayor. Ordinance 2025-32. An ordinance amending the Sandy Development Code by revising sections 17.10.30, 17.12.10, 17.34.10, 17.36.10, 17.38.10, 17.40.10, 17.74.70, 17.84.10, and 17.90.40 of Title 17 of the Sandy Municipal Code.
As amended.
Well done, Jeff.
May
Drink some
I
water.
get a motion, please? Pass the second reading?
I'll make a motion to pass the second reading of ordinance number 2025-32.
Second?
I'll second.
I have a motion to approve the second reading by Counselor Ramsayer and a second by Counselor Smallwood. All those in favor of approving second reading of 2025-32, vote aye.
Aye.
Chris votes aye. Opposed, vote nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Kelly.
Thanks,
Thank
Kelly.
you, Kelly.
I think Jeff's our new auctioneer.
We'll see if we can help any longer ordinance.
Yeah, next time.
We just say various sections of Title 17.
Yeah, sure could.
Thank you, Josh. I will go from the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I initially was just going to say thank you to Kelly for his work on the HPS and getting us this far, but there was a slide in one of his presentations this evening that I just wanted to highlight. So beyond the HPS, over the last 5 years, we've done a transit master plan, a parks and trails master plan, a water system master plan, a transportation system master plan, an economic opportunity analysis, a housing capacity analysis, a housing production strategy, a comp plan, and before you in the next 45 days, you'll see a wastewater facility plan. So just want to call out like the incredible amount of work that the staff here has done over the last 5 years, setting really the future for Sandy over the next couple of decades, depending on how quickly we update some of those plans. And certainly all of that work, doesn't happen just because staff is here making it happen, but also because we have great direction from our elected officials and desire to make Sandy a better place and keep it wonderful, but also improve upon where we can. So thank you to all of you for giving us that direction and the guidance that we need to make those implementations and master plans, but also thank you to all the staff who are not in this room, but those that are in this room as well for all the work that goes into drafting them and getting them across the finish line. We also touched briefly on during the HPS discussion the importance of that community services officer. I know there's a lot of interest from the council. We did hold interviews today. There's 5 finalists that are moving forward in the process. So we'll have some hopefully exciting news and good news to share in the coming days about where we're at with an offer and a timeline to fill that position. And then last but not least, I did receive 3 proposals for the municipal court judge position that closed today at 3 p.m. So we have 3 proposals. I have not gone through all of them to make sure they all meet the minimum qualifications. But the RFP that we had published did indicate that the top 3 would be advanced. So I'll just make sure that all 3 meet the minimum qualifications and then work on scheduling sort of a meeting to score those applicants and the interview with the council. So that is a work in progress still, but we are on track to meet the timeline that I had originally laid out. And I will follow up as we go further through that process. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Wait, don't we have stuff coming up?
We've got a lot of stuff coming up.
Winterfest, something.
Oh, yeah, there's a minor
little
thing
stuff.
this
Come on.
Friday, no big deal. We do have our tree lighting this Friday. And the kickoff to Winterfest. Thank you, Councilor Hokinson. So tree lighting is Friday evening, immediately followed by Winterfest. There was also some exciting news in our community that Sandy High's going to the playoffs for their football team. That's also this Friday. So unfortunately, there's a little bit of a scheduling conflict for some members of our community. We did kick around an idea of trying to figure out how we could reschedule or accommodate that, but really with the way that the dates fall and Thanksgiving next week and the programs that we already have in place and outlined, there wasn't really a capacity for us to shuffle things around. But yeah, the holiday season is here. We've shouldn't say we because I haven't been decorating, but our parks and recreation staff have been busy decorating our parks and the entryway into the community. The west end of the couplet, they were out there putting lights in the ground this morning, so it's like last minute go time right now for them to get everything installed and powered up. But yeah, we're looking forward to kicking off another round of good community events and hoping the weather cooperates Friday evening.
Go ahead, Sean.
When we had this round this year of council, I got appointed to Winterfest committee. I just point out, we haven't really had a committee. We haven't met as a committee since last year. But I would like to hear back as to donations that we got for this year or changes, what's new and improved in this year's tree lighting or Winterfest. Maybe that's something we can include in next Friday's.
Absolutely.
Next weekend's email or something for us. And we did meet the wastewater, but I think that announcement, those materials are already shared, so that's it for me.
You good? All right, the only thing I have is that there was I think when we had the library, we were looking at the library strategic plan, there was some wanting of more of their solid information. I just wanted to point out in her staff update every month, they lay out the number of checkouts, the number of, it's all of her information is there in her staff updates going back months and months and months. So her solid data is available to us. That's it.
I don't have much. I'm excited for the tree lighting Friday. Hopefully we don't get rained on, but it's Oregon, so there you go. I didn't have any meetings or committees or anything this week. I did want to mention Kelly. Kelly is always really concise in his information. I've worked with Kelly for 3 years now, off and on through planning commission and on a different level at city council, but I really appreciate the fact that when I have a question and I don't know where to go, I can ask Kelly and Kelly will get me to the right people. I know he's super busy, but I just wanted to recognize that because you're always willing to be where we need you to be and answer the questions that we have, and I'm sure everybody in the community has. So all the work you do here is really recognized, but also behind the scenes, you're always working and you're always willing to give advice or give a connection or let us know or anybody where we need to be in the right places. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Cool. I had a C4 last Thursday or Thursday before that. It all runs together. It was done in Canby and they did a presentation really surrounding their economic development achievements, transportation system achievements, and their path forward for that. Specifically more around their industrial area and business park area that's sounds like it's doing very well. So that was what the whole meeting was, them sharing their story. So that was it.
Nothing, no report.
Let's see.
Mayor, did you want to turn it over to Chris real quick? Or Councilor Mayton?
Go for it. I'm sorry, yeah.
I was gonna say the one time I took notes at my Parks and Rec meeting and you were gonna skip me. Okay. Just kidding. I had my Parks and Rec planning meeting. I also did the wastewater meeting, but we talked about wastewater. So during Parks and Rec, we talked a lot about facility and space coordination between Parks and Rec, collaborating with the school district and other community groups to streamline and coordinate access to shared facilities like gyms and fields. Some of the key improvements there was bringing the stakeholders together to align scheduling and goals, leading to transparency and efficient use of the spaces for things like, Mountain Storm and adult softball leagues. They're going to continue to focus on the recreation programs and special events. Some of the major events, Base Camp Cedar Park planned a 2-day skateboard and bike competition to attract both local and regional participants, emphasizing inclusivity and community involvement. And then Yappy Hour expanded dog park event, increased participation with engagement. And then obviously Winterfest, which I don't need to talk about. And then talked about senior services as a goal to advocate and secure additional funding from the state, federal, and private grants to sustain programs for like Meals on Wheels, congregate dining, transportation, and case management. Join Meals on Wheels America to access more grants, first time participating in this network. And they continue to focus on data collection and financial sustainability. And then a little bit more about an update on some of the parks. Deer Point Creek construction updated, shared, including new playground features and progress on structures. They invited the board members on the Parks and Rec to go schedule a visit to see the activities during construction. And then Mining Park renovation, which we all talked about the last time when they were at the city council, they gave an update to the board members there. And then Tinkle Creek Trail ongoing restoration with invasive species removal and native planting, coordinated with the Clackamas River Basin Council. And they were looking for volunteer opportunities, for more volunteer opportunities, I guess. And then facility maintenance, new staff member Ryan was hired, making significant improvements in responding proactively to maintenance requests. And that's all I got.
Great, thank you, Chris. Okay. We had a ribbon cutting at the museum for women leaders in Sandy, and just kind of a kickoff for their future. And so I'm really excited for the museum and what they're doing, and excited to see the leadership and where they're going to take it. So I look forward to those. It is a very nice exhibit in there with pictures of all the women. I was shocked to hear that our first woman mayor was in 1918 in Sandy, before women even had the vote. And she was the first woman in Sandy to cast a vote under, when suffrage passed. So that was pretty amazing. Yeah, standing on some really big shoulders there. I appreciated the veterans pinning ceremony. I had meant to get to that, but I ended up getting stuck at a medical appointment in Portland and couldn't get through all the traffic fast enough. I'm looking forward to the tree lighting ceremony on Friday and kickoff to Winterfest events. We had the wastewater subcommittee meeting. There was a lot of things that are all just kind of coming together in the next 2 to 3 weeks with new information that they're getting to share with us and put into the wastewater master plan. The direction I gave them was to just make sure that master plan update was worded in a way that, the public and the city council members could understand it and clearly understand the different alternatives that have been considered and that are being considered and the pros and cons of those. So I'm really excited about seeing that. I did make a post on Facebook about kind of some different, pedestrian crossings in downtown. The feedback I'd gotten from Tyler was, and this is all part of that community livability group that we're trying to kind of make some progress there on some improving pedestrian safety downtown. We do have tentative permission from ODOT to take there's 2 intersections on Proctor and 2 intersections on Pioneer, so 4 total that are already signed with yellow pedestrian crossings. So we do have, tentative permission to go ahead and put in the the light up crosswalks there. And so that would really help with people that, you know, are going downtown. I mean, it's just, when there's a lot of cars and a lot of people, it's just hard to kind of sometimes see, especially in the evening or dusk, or if the sun's shining in your eyes. So I think that'll go a long ways. There was also discussion about the whole Tenite Proctor intersection that we've got on our list of community livability issues of how to deal with that. That's the one where we've got, you know, ODOT has the highway, the county has mining, the city has Wolf, and the city has, you know, is on the receiving end of all the complaints. And so, you know, my hope is that we can get the engineers, traffic engineers from ODOT and the county and the city to kind of go out there and take a look at the problems and possible solutions that hopefully are fairly easy to implement and don't require major construction. And let's see, I think, and then also the looking into those light up signs for both Sandy Elementary and Cedar Ridge, based on that. If we could do that without even having safe routes to schools, which I think we can, because they cost about $5,000. I'd like to see us pursue that because it's getting dark out and this is the time of year when those light up crossings really help. So other than that, I appreciate everybody's hard work. You know, we're getting back together before Thanksgiving. And I want to just thank everybody here for your hard work, your patience, and all the volunteering that you do both here and in the community. It's really, it's what makes Sandy such a great community to live in. And I want to wish everybody out there a happy Thanksgiving. Don, you had one more thing?
I should have brought it up. I want to thank mayor and staff for putting together the letter to the OGC. I thought it was well written, right on point, and well done. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.